Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our work session dated August 11th, 2021. Let's start with the pledge, and then we'll go into the meeting. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sorry, I'll get the chair close enough. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you to my colleagues on the board, my trustees, who ran the meeting last week in all-time speed. From what I understand, I'm not taking it personally. We will make up for it tonight. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Casada, for setting a track record, apparently. All good. They voted on a lot of legislation actually last week, some important pieces of legislation, and much appreciated on behalf of the community. And we're back with much improved also screens if the public wants to come view the meetings in person or wants to join us by Zoom. It's all good. Does anybody have announcements? Going from right? Do you? Okay.
I do. I'm sorry. Thank you, Mayor. Just one quick thing, I guess, that this is for the Spanish community, for the Ecuadorian community, and in specific, I just want to wish them, actually it was yesterday, is in Spanish, el primer grito de independencia, which means the first scream of independence that happened 212 years ago. So that Ecuador celebrated the Independence Day from at that time. So there was some celebrations in Queens, some celebrations actually in Peekskill as well, and some in Postchester, I believe. So I wanted to congratulate the Ecuadorian community on Independence Day that was celebrated actually yesterday and over the weekend. So thank you, Mayor.
Great. Anyone else with announcements? Okay, I said this, or had written it in my mayor's update, and for those of you that don't subscribe to it, please feel free to subscribe. We try to get notices out once a week. Not all municipalities do that, not all mayors do it. I just find it very helpful to members of the community to simply highlight some issues. Yesterday's, we started with a hopeful welcome and a hopeful administration under a new interim governor that will start, and I guess now it's 13 days because Governor Cuomo will be stepping down in 13 days. It's a sad moment for many. The governor has been in office for many years. Before that, he was a mover and shaker in housing in New York City. He's had a long career in politics. So it is both a sad moment. It is also a hopeful moment with the first woman governor in the state of New York. Feels like some change is occurring. And she is also a longstanding political figure in the state of New York and has held many, many positions. So we, and I'm sure the board joins me in this, wish her much luck in this transitional period. And in her career going forward on behalf of the residents and businesses in the state of New York. Thank you, Manny, for also, I was not aware, some people in the public may not know, but in the 1980s, I think it's under the Nixon administration, a lot of different people of Latino descent were sort of categorized as Hispanics. It's actually more of a marketing term, to be honest. No, and I think it is under Nixon in 1984, but somebody will fact check me and correct me. But it was Nixon that started, and then it continued. The truth is that many of our communities are made up of different people from different countries. It's not one big group with their own identities. Ecuador is a big population here in Ossining and other communities in Westchester. It's descendants from other parts of Latin America. So this is a diverse, but it's a real international set from my perspective, and always nice to honor different groups of people and their own celebratory time. So I'm glad you brought it up, and I hope that we learn more from others about the different people who make up our specific municipality. I appreciate that. And we're going to go to Village Manager to start our meeting.
Did you
Oh, I
wanna
see. I was
mention-
looking over there to your right to look for Stuart, but Stuart isn't there. Stuart is up there. I see
Did you
Stuart.
want to mention our public engagement sessions tomorrow night?
I'll let you do that. I saw
I
it.
w-
It
I
was
w-
it was in my mayor's note, but go ahead.
I just want to remind everybody, the Village of Ossining will be applying for the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. This is a $10 million grant opportunity. Public engagement is really important, and we will be hosting 2 public engagement sessions. You can find them on our website, a link. They will be virtual, one at 5:30 in English and one at 7:30 in Spanish. If you can't make it, don't worry, we will tape them and you can view them, and we'll also be putting on an online survey and hosting some other things later in the month. So you will have plenty of time to engage and opportunities, and give us your ideas for how you would like to spend $10 million on our downtown.
So for us, $10 million is a big amount. The reason I actually, I had it in the update, I didn't announce it. This is not something the board is managing. It's not a town hall. People oftentimes get confused. Public engagement, this is really being run on behalf of the corporation, the Village of Ossining, meaning that we're trying to get input for consultants and to, I think I said win a grant. I don't know what the right verbiage is, but let's call it winning a grant. It's a big amount of money for us. It's sort of life-changing for this community if we can get it. So this is an input opportunity for members of the community who both live here, work here, or have a connection to Ossining. Who's running the meeting? Who's the moderator? It's not going to be me, and I don't think it's one of the trustees, right?
So tomorrow night, Maddi and I will be running the meeting. It actually depends on what time. We have a off-site visit on Long Island tomorrow, Mayor, so we'll hopefully
By
get
we,
back
she
in
means
time.
she and I have, we're going to be together tomorrow. We may not make it back in time. Is that?
Well, it's only depending on Long Island traffic, so hopefully we'll make it back in time. But we'll be facilitating the first session in English, and Jaime Martinez will be facilitating the second
Okay,
engagement series
Great.
in Spanish.
great. All good. Okay, next.
Okay, so first up, we have Frank Feliciotto from Creighton Manning here with us via Zoom, and he will be presenting an update on our Route 9 road diet study. As you all know, we have been working on a study to determine the impacts and the potential benefits of narrowing Route 9 from Cedar Lane on North Island down to Cedar Place on South Island, so that it will no longer be 4 lanes of traffic, but reduce it to 2, one going each way. This is a way that we can add more parking and create more walkability in the community, connect the Main Street and Croton business districts a little bit more fully. This is also a project that the village has been looking at and talking about for years, so we're really happy to see this coming to this point, and I'd like to thank trustees White and trustee Fritchie for being on the TAC committee for this, the Technical Advisory Committee, which also has other members of staff as well. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Frank.
Thank you, Karen. Good evening, Mayor, Board of Trustees, and staff. My name is Frank Feliciotto. Some of you I've met, some of you I haven't. It's nice to be here. And I'm joined by a few of my team members who have logged in on Zoom, not as panelists, so they're here with me as well. And what I'd like to do is just share what I'll try to keep as brief as possible, a presentation updating you all and the public on the Route 9 road diet study. So I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to start a slideshow. So if everyone can see my screen, is that true?
Everybody can see it.
Great, thank you. So we've been engaged with the village since January on a study to look at a potential road diet on Route 9, aka North and South Highland Avenue, right through the heart of the village. And obviously everyone's familiar with this picture. This is the keystone intersection in the entire study. I'm sure you know it all very well. What I'd like to do first is just really have a very quick lesson on what a road diet is, so everyone understands what this study and what this presentation is all about. A road diet transforms a 4-lane road without shoulders into a 3-lane road with shoulders. It essentially reallocates the way the pavement, the asphalt, the blacktop is used between the physical curb lines of the road. There's no widening, there's no hard construction that you would see with a typical road project. It really comes down to changing the way the lines on the road are striped to reallocate the way the lanes are used. And so this would be a common view of a road diet. When you have 2 lanes in each direction, you would remove 1 lane in each direction, and in that pavement, you pick up the opportunity for a center lane as well as shoulders. Why would you consider a road diet? That's first and foremost, I think what a lot of people might be asking is why would you do this? And first and foremost, it comes down to safety. When you diet a road, you reduce the number of conflict points on the road. The image at the bottom left of the screen shows that. When you have 4 lanes total, you have double the conflict points, i.e. the opportunities for a collision that you would have if you had a road with 1 lane in each direction and a center turn lane. Road diets tend to be more comfortable for side street traffic. If you're turning from a road like North Malcolm or Aqueduct, you have to look for a gap in traffic in up to 4 different lanes. When you road diet, you're only looking for a gap in 2 lanes. They're generally easier for pedestrians to negotiate. They tend to come with an overall reduction in travel speeds along the road, and they prevent multiple threat collisions between vehicles and pedestrians. The bottom right-hand corner of the screen shows an example of a pedestrian maybe trying to cross a road. He or she's communicated with car A, which is the car closest to that person in the crosswalk, but that car creates a shadow, and that pedestrian is unable to see the car B, coming up behind it. And so it creates this illusion that, okay, I'm safe, but I'm not really safe. With a road diet, you'd only have 1 lane to begin with. Some basics from the Federal Highway Authority on road diets. Again, starting with safety, because that's really our utmost priority. Road diets have been shown to reduce overall crashes along a corridor from 19 to 47%. So it's a significant reduction in crashes. There's been a proven reduction in travel speeds and speed differential. And the best example of this that I can give is if someone is traveling 32 miles per hour on Route 9, more or less abiding by the speed limit, today someone could pass that person and go 40 or 45 or 50. With 1 lane in each direction, the person following the law essentially meters the speed of traffic elsewhere in the corridor, so it creates a calming effect. There's operational benefits. You're separating left turns from through movements. One example I can give you is if you're making a left turn in the morning onto in Cortland, if you're headed to the school, you're doing so in a lane that's also used by through traffic that's trying to head into town. So you have the stress of someone waiting there with traffic fast moving behind it. There's benefits for pedestrians and bicyclists. We call this complete streets. We're balancing the road for all users. The narrower cross-section makes it easier for pedestrians to cross. And this is a little bit more qualitative, but there are livability benefits associated with road diets. There's
Hey Frank, we lost you there.
He's the only one frozen? Dale,
We just have no sound.
We just have no sound. We just have no sound. We just have no sound.
now we do.
Now we have extra sound.
Do you hear me now?
Well, your internet is unstable is the message on here.
Maddi, that may be from your end because I can hear Frank perfectly fine up here.
Really?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yep.
Okay. Is Dale frozen or she's just in one position? Okay.
Should I start again?
Well, go back a couple of sentences. Your livable benefits.
Okay, so I was talking about livability benefits, and these are a little bit more qualitative, but when you have a place that's more comfortable for pedestrians, you have a sense of place, you have a sense of a downtown, people want to be there. It's not just a road to pass through a place, it's more of a destination. And when you have road diet, you also have the opportunity for streetscapes, which I'll get to a little while. So why a road diet in Ossining? These were a few goals that were set out at the beginning of our engagement with the village. These were loud and clear from the RFP. Create a safer environment for pedestrians, bicyclists, and drivers. Improve connectivity between the east and the west sides of the village. There is a notion that Route 9 is a barrier between the west side of the village, the Crescent, Main Street, and Croton Avenue, and sort of the upper village. There's also a notion that Route 9 condones passing through the village rather than creating a place where people want to be. So by eliminating that highway aspect of the road, you create a more livable place. There's a desire to increase public parking in the village. And a road diet would enable the village to add a significant amount of parking without having to make a capital investment in a parking garage. And finally, there's an opportunity to address traffic signal timing issues with DOT. And this was something that came out of the public engagement. The public is very aware that the traffic signals just do not work harmoniously. And we have the DOT at the table as part of this project, and that's one of the big goals. So in terms of the study area, just so everyone's clear on what we're examining, the area in red, the line in red represents Route 9, North and South Highland Avenue, where it's at least 2 lanes in each direction. So the northern part of our study area is by Mavis, Cedar Lane and Snowden, and that's at the top of the page. And our southerly boundary is Cedar Place, which is 1 block south of M. Wilton and Waller, just south of the school. And that is about a mile-long section where the road is 2 lanes in each direction. North and south of that, the green lines, Route 9 is only 1 lane in each direction. So you have a mile-long stretch of Route 9 that's 2 lanes in each direction, but it's bookended by 1 lane in each direction. So the focus is on that red area to try to basically sew these 2 ends together and create one uniform stretch of Route 9, 1 lane in each direction. So this is a part of the presentation that I want to give a lot of credit to Trustee White. She was very helpful in providing a lot of historical context to Ossining. And this is important because these photos before urban renewal happened in the 70s and 80s show that Route 9 only had 1 lane in each direction. It was a downtown area. There was parking on the street. There was a sense of walkable sidewalks. There were buildings right up against the sidewalk. You can see here at the top right photo, this is if you were standing right next to the Emigrant Savings Bank looking into the hollow down towards Aqueduct and Denny, this was what you saw. Those buildings on the left no longer exist. That parking has been removed, and you now have a much wider roadway. So these photos really show Route 9 in the context of what was the case. Then in the 70s and 80s, urban renewal happened, and a significant number of buildings were removed. And along Route 9 specifically, they were removed to make way for a widening of Route 9. And the bottom right-hand photo shows really what happened. All those buildings were removed, and Route 9 was widened significantly to its current alignment today. So just to start off with a brief history beyond the urban renewal, what this slide shows is that our efforts here in 2021 are not occurring in a vacuum. After urban renewal occurred in the 1980s, as far back as 1998, there was a downtown vision plan that recommends a road diet. And at the bottom left-hand portion of the screen, there's an excerpt from that study that basically said the recommendation is to request a study by DOT to consider reducing the number of lanes to facilitate pedestrian crossings and permit parking. So 23 years ago, there was an effort to do exactly what we're doing right now. Back in 2001 to 2006, the village did commission a study. There was a lot on this. DOT was engaged, and that study ultimately resulted in there being a road diet implemented at the south end of the village near the Arcadian Shopping Center. But it stopped short of really the heart of the village. And that road diet went further into Briarcliff Manor and other points south. The 2009 comp plan speaks to a road diet going through the downtown area. There was further consideration in 2009 to hiring a consultant to reboot what was done in 2001 and 2002. That effort was halted. And then in 2017, the Downtown Redevelopment Working Committee produced a final report. And this is really interesting. There was a quote there, and I highlighted part of it. Most important and impactful solutions with the greatest impact to the community would be reconfiguring Route 9 and the Croton Avenue intersection to 2 lanes with on-street parallel parking. This change should extend from the northern end of the village by Snowden Avenue to the Arcadian Shopping Center. So virtually exactly what we're talking about in 2021. And then earlier this year, we rebooted that effort. So existing conditions is what we started with when we got to work on this road, figuring out what we have, what we're up against. A few facts about the road. I don't want to recite them all, but obviously this is a state roadway, so it was very important from day one to engage the New York State DOT. I'll get to that in the next slide. Posted speed limits 30 miles an hour. We measured the speed and we found that the 85th percentile speed is actually 36 miles an hour. So large majority of people are traveling in excess of the speed limit, which is not surprising. There's no meaningful coordination of traffic signals. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to, once they get a green light at Church Street, they run into a red light at Main or at Croton. There's no communication. One of the things we learned, and I don't think this is news to anyone on this Zoom, is that the key flows that we're trying to accommodate are southbound in the morning coming into the village and northbound in the afternoon coming into the village from the south. So those are the 2 primary traffic flows that create the critical analysis. We formed on day one a technical advisory committee. The purpose of this committee was really to meet monthly, and we've met monthly ever since January, with this group of people, to stay on target, to discuss key things, to share information, to get feedback from DOT, to get feedback from Chief of Police and Village Engineer and Planning Director, Fraioli and Martinez, and really to guide the study so that there were expectations along the way. And this has proven to be incredibly helpful in having DOT basically at the table for the entirety of the study. So the Technical Advisory Committee has helped guide this study. It's been an opportunity to flesh out issues, discuss next steps, and it's been great for this project because while it is a village-sponsored project, we obviously need DOT's okay to do anything. We conducted, in addition to the Technical Advisory Committee, we conducted a robust platform of public engagement starting in April of this year. We were dealing with COVID at the time, so we had virtual focus groups, both in English and in Spanish. A total of 61 Ossining residents, business owners, community leaders joined the 6 Zoom focus groups that we held in April. And you can see a breakdown there by English and Spanish, by male, female. And we accounted some of the words that were used to describe Route 9, and we listed them on the left. Pretty strong words for the roadway. And through this public engagement, we learned a number of things about Route 9, and we distilled it down into these 8 points. What is not working on Route 9? People feel that they cannot cross the street safely. There's an insufficient number of pedestrian crossings. The one in particular that was raised was there isn't a signalized opportunity to cross Route 9 between Croton Avenue and Van Cortlandt and Montgomery. It's a very long stretch of fast-moving traffic, and there's not an opportunity to cross. Pedestrian times are not long enough, and left turners are problematic, uncontrolled, and dangerous. People had the following improvement recommendations for Route 9. They voiced a need for additional parking, more pedestrian signals, coordinate the traffic lights, and follow the examples of Tarrytown and Sleepy Hollow. And I should have said at the beginning, Route 9 through Sleepy Hollow and Tarrytown, as probably all of you know, is a very, very different experience than Route 9 for Austin. In the heart of Tarrytown, you have one lane in each direction with parking on both sides. Sleepy Hollow has some similar stretches of Route 9 as well. So the public engagement effort identified three key issues: safety, walkability, and education. Those were really the three main takeaways from the engagement. Got to focus on safety and walkability, and also on educating both drivers and pedestrians. And this quote was one that I took from the engagement. This is a village, make it feel like a village, not like a highway. So getting back to the study area, just to remind everyone what we're focused on, there's a total of 14 intersections that were studied as part of this effort. The intersections in blue are controlled by a traffic signal. The intersections in orange are just a stop sign. So there's a mix of traffic signals and stop signs up and down the corridor. Our technical approach included a range of 24-hour traffic counts. Those are those black tubes that you see stretched across the street. They measure traffic continuously for 24 hours, up to a week or more. We conducted actual turning movement counts at 14 intersections, studying the AM and PM peak commuting hours. Obviously, we did this study during COVID, and this was a very, very, very significant portion of the study, was how do we deal with data that is undeniably affected by the pandemic. We spent probably 6 to 8 weeks calibrating data to represent a pre-pandemic condition. We wanted to ensure that the data we collected was calibrated back to 2019 so that we could deal with things that weren't being represented in 2021. And this was a process that was close collaboration with DOT. The Poughkeepsie office of DOT was involved. Everyone in the TAC was involved with respect to, hey, do these volumes look right? Should they be higher? Should they be lower? Fortunately, we had a wealth of historical data to use, to rely on and calibrate. And we were able to complete that process through COVID. We also reviewed crash history. That was a big component of this project. And the following slide summarizes the crash history over the last 3 years. So 2017 to 2020, total of 216 collisions, 12 involving pedestrians. 25% of those crashes resulted in injuries. That's 2% higher than the statewide average of accidents on a roadway like Route 9 resulting in injuries. And you can see the hot spots here. Most of the accidents occur at signalized intersections, although there is a significant portion of accidents that occurred at non-signalized locations, upwards of 38. So what we did was, when we adjusted for COVID, what we then did was we looked 10 years into the future. We don't want to analyze a situation in 2021 and have any modeling and any determination of roadway capacity not work in 2025. So we want to give this a hard look, and so we analyzed what's called an ETC plus 10, estimated time of completion plus 10 years. We assumed that if all went well, that this project could be something that could be implemented sometime in 2022 if everything were to go right. So we actually analyzed traffic in 2032. So that assumes a 0.5% of growth every year for 10 years. It also assumes that traffic is going to return to pre-COVID levels. In other words, the analysis is very, very conservative, and we wanted to do that to ensure that we're not underestimating things along Route 9, and that what we're doing it with the future in mind. We analyzed the situation in 2032 with and without a road diet. So what does it look like in 2032 with a road diet, and what does it look like without? We use some modeling software known as Synchro and SimTraffic, which is industry standard, and we looked to the HWA and AASHTO for guidelines, industry standard authorities that provide guidance on this. So these are what we have completed analysis of. This is what we're looking at in terms of future conditions. One travel lane in each direction from Cedar Lane to Cedar Place, a two-way left turn lane at intersections that don't have a traffic signal, exclusive turn lanes at signalized intersections, as well as at Aqueduct and Denny, and I'll show a concept of that shortly. We're looking at traffic signal coordination, shorter pedestrian crossings, on-street parking, and streetscape opportunities. And it'll be a little easier to see some of these things when I get to the concepts. What we ended up with is a list of road diet trade-offs, and I probably should have prefaced this. The expectation for a road diet is never to improve travel speeds and travel times. It's an unrealistic expectation. You can't reduce a lane in each direction and expect that traffic will move quicker through the corridor. That's not the point. The point here is to calm traffic, to balance it, to make it more of a livable, walkable community, not a thoroughfare. So what you have on the left are what is typically seen as the positives of a road diet. Reduction in conflict points, improves user comfort. We estimate that the village would gain anywhere from 125 to 200 on-street parking spaces over the course of that mile, which puts a significant number of on-street parking spaces in close proximity to the heart of Ossining at Main Street. We're able to provide an emergency vehicle area on Church Street. I'll get to that. That was came out of some of the engagement we did with the fire department. Provides additional and shorter crosswalks along Route 9, enhances the opportunity for streetscapes and flex space, creates left turn lanes, and it reduces the barrier caused by Route 9, improving east-west connectivity. So the items that would fall into the negative for some people are increased travel time through the corridor, particularly southbound in the AM and northbound in the morning. There will be a marginal increase in one's travel time through the entire corridor. There is some increase in delay on side streets as a result of a road diet. And on Church Street in particular, there will be some additional vehicle queuing on Church Street, because if you're familiar with Church Street, you have 3 lanes there now, 2 of which turn left onto northbound Route 9. We have to remove one of those left turns because we're only providing 1 lane on Route 9 to receive it. But the good thing about that is we're able to provide an emergency vehicle area on Church Street. So there's always trade-offs with road diets, and it's all about, for the Board of Trustees making a decision, it's all about balance and expectations. And if the priorities are parking, walkability, livability, safety, traffic calming, those are your green bullets. But if you're focused solely on motor vehicle traffic and maximizing the road for the personal automobile, then that's on the right side of this chart. So I'm about to show 3 concept plans. These are just partial, really, sections of the corridor. This first one, you have Church Street on the left-hand side of the page. Just to orient you, north is up. I'm sorry, north is to the right. I apologize. North is to the right. So this building right here is 200 Main Street. And you can see here that you have parking on both sides of Route 9. right in the heart of the downtown. One lane in each direction. Church Street, as I mentioned, we'd have to remove one of those left turn lanes. When we met with the fire department, there were some concerns about emergency vehicles being able to get up Church Street during times of emergencies. One of the things that we have an opportunity to do here is create a hatched area that a fire truck in the event of an emergency could use to bypass any queue and move on to Route 9. In addition, at Main Street, if you're familiar with the road now, the road goes like this. And this is all asphalt right now. And there's parked vehicles that back up right along here into moving traffic. We see an opportunity to create a streetscape area, this green area, that would essentially provide an opportunity for outdoor seating, dining, passive space, maybe a gateway or placemaking opportunity. Shrink that intersection. This is the entrance to your downtown. This is the entrance to the Crescent. Slow traffic down through there and make it a little bit more balanced and comfortable for what is a very pedestrianized area. In doing so, there's an opportunity to add a crosswalk here. And this came out of some of the discussions in the TAC meeting. There isn't a crosswalk on this side. So there is the tendency to see people crossing the street in between cars. So here's an opportunity to create a crosswalk and have it lead to this streetscape area. Moving on to the north, we come to Croton Avenue and Broadway. So at this intersection, similarly, this is the famous right turn that can't make a right turn on red. We see an opportunity in dieting the road to preserve the right turn lane, but not have it take this kind of diagonal approach to Croton Avenue. Keep it in the intersection to shorten the crosswalks for people. And in doing so, create an opportunity for streetscape area here and also on this side of the intersection to shorten the crosswalk for people. And then continued on-street parking down into the hollow. There's a bus stop at this location right here, so that needs to remain. And then moving down into the hollow, we see the opportunity for a pedestrian crossing on this side of the intersection. This is Aqueduct and Denny. Right now you have 4 lanes of moving traffic, no turn lanes. We see an opportunity to create dedicated left turn lanes so that those vehicles are not crossing over each other and allow for a pedestrian crossing at that location. So these are just some of the types of improvements that you're going to get with a road diet. You're much more able to do things like this when you balance the road. And then parking heading up towards Havel Street and North Malcolm. So before I continue on to kind of wrap this all up, there is a number of case studies out there that we look to in terms of guidance. And obviously no one community is the same. So what happens in Santa Monica, California and Grand Rapids, Michigan is different than what happens in Austin, New York. But just some data points for you to consider. When Ocean Park Boulevard was dieted, there was a 65% reduction in collisions and the 85th percentile speed after the fact was 27 miles per hour. Again, different area, but some data points. Grand Rapids, Michigan, decreased vehicle speeds led to an increase in pedestrian and bicycle flow through the downtown. And there was a quote here from someone at the city of Grand Rapids reported that businesses along the corridor were generally happy with the project because it perceived improvement in quality of life attributes and livability. And then in San Francisco, there was a large increase in cycling and pedestrian activity, reduction in collisions, and it aided in the revitalization of an area. Obviously, if you create over 100 parking spaces on Route 9, you provide the opportunity for parking for the businesses that need it. So moving forward, kind of next steps coming out of this meeting, obviously we want to receive your feedback tonight or in the days following, hear from the public if they're listening and they have questions. We have a TAC meeting next Monday, the Technical Advisory Committee. So the plan would be to finalize the traffic study and the concept plan by the end of August, and then be prepared to submit to the DOT for formal review in mid-September. And that's it. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. I know I went a little bit long. This is a very important project for our firm and for the village. We're really honored and pleased to work on it. So happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Thank you so much. Great presentation. You didn't go over that much. You were okay. I can start from the right or the left. I'll go last, but comments from the board? Or from anybody else?
Pretty familiar with this, so I'm going to let people.
I can
Okay.
I can start then.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Frank. Appreciate it. That was really helpful and really exciting. I think that the village is in desperate need of exactly what we just saw tonight. One of the questions that I had is about how the changing traffic on 9 will impact other areas such as 9A. Can you talk a little bit about how that change might look?
Sure. So when it comes to a road like 9A, and if you're thinking about where you would have to make that decision, you'd have to make that decision significantly in advance of this change to really get to Route 9A with any time savings in mind. 9A is really a different type of roadway. It's more of a parkway, limited access type of roadway. I think the most important thing to consider here is that the road diet section that we're looking at is bookended by Route 9 with one lane in each direction. So what's coming into the village from the north by Avalon and Dee Dee's Diner, let's say, is in one lane already. So there's no bottleneck being created. The one lane already exists well before you would even diet the road. And the same can be said for the northbound direction coming from the south. You've already accepted one lane by Acadian Shopping Center. So Route 9A really doesn't come into play, and I think it would only come into play in the southbound direction if you're coming from Croton on Hudson or Cortland. You have to make a decision back by the split, and you have to know that this was going to affect you. And the point is that when you have one lane leading into it already, there should not be that type of diversion. Really, when we're talking about road diets and diversions, we're talking about very, very proximate parallel roads that provide a very similar path of travel. And Route 9A is really not a similar path of travel when you zoom out on a map.
Got it.
That answers the question.
That's helpful. And 9A is not our territory. Right, it's not our territory, but it's something that we hear a lot about because it gets backed up now as is, and so I can imagine that the congestion might increase with these kinds of changes. Nevertheless, I think that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do that. It's just a consideration. And secondly, I'm curious about any trade-offs that you had to make where, in looking at the plan, I'm particularly interested in the intersections where you said you were going to create I forget what it's called, a seating feature or the green area where we could do this or we could do that. Can you talk a little bit about where the TAC had some decisions to make and why you landed on this model as opposed to something else?
Are you referring to the to this section right here?
Yeah, as an example.
Yeah, it's a very large area of pavement. So when we look at road diets, we're always looking for opportunities to reclaim either unused or overbuilt portions of the road that could be used as flex space. Really, this could be anything. It could just be a simple curb line and nothing on it. Really, the end result is what the village wants it to be and the public wants it to be. But I think the point here is that the opportunity exists to kind of narrow that a little bit and reclaim some of that space that's really just used by cars darting off Route 9 to get onto Main. You know, the other benefit here too that we heard from the TAC discussion is that these parking spaces here, when you need to leave them, you have to back out into it's essentially Route 9 or Main Street traffic. We have the opportunity through our on-street parking to rediscover those parking spaces right here. So while we're eliminating them right here to realize this, we're replacing them right next to it. So there was some feedback there, and we think that the you know, not having the backups, the reversal maneuvers from those spaces would actually help traffic.
Got it. Thank you. And is there anywhere else in the plan where you zigged when you could have zagged? I'm looking at what looks like a generally final product, and it looks good and it looks interesting. But having not been a part of the TAC, I'm just interested in the process of putting this together. Where some of the decision points were.
Yeah. So coming over to Croton, I mean, this was a very significant focus. This is the keystone intersection. This is sort of the linchpin of the whole corridor. We looked very, very, very significantly at opening Broadway up to full traffic maneuvers. This was sort of an example of zigging and zagging. Right now, you can only make a right turn from Broadway onto Route 9. We looked at what it would take to allow for traffic to make either a through movement to cross the intersection or make a left to go north. What we concluded is that in order to do that, you'd have to allocate traffic signal time to Broadway, independent of any other movement at this intersection. And so by doing that, you'd have to steal time from another movement. And in this case, time is of the essence at this intersection. You're kind of stealing from Peter to pay Paul. And it really didn't make a lot of sense. So that was sort of ruled out. That was sort of a zig and a zag that we had to eventually, decide, look, this is not really feasible if we want to diet the road and get the pedestrian benefits from the project.
Thank you. That's helpful. That's it for me.
Anybody else?
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to kind of go back to that point. A really good presentation. So can you explain to me what was the timing? What are we talking about that we have to steal from what? Because right now what I'm looking at is a 1, 2, 3, 4-point intersection, sure. Changing the lights. How much are we talking about? What is the time frame on that one too? Because that was actually one of the comments that I had is a lot of people are saying, if you guys is doing the study, can you guys look into this? Why can't I make a straight run from that? If I'm coming out from the community center or just coming out from Broadway itself, I want to go up Croton Avenue, I can't. I literally have to go all the way around Church Street to come back around and make that turn or just find my other way around. So what is the time frame on the light that we are talking about?
What happens right now is right now at this intersection, there is a point at which all traffic stops and pedestrians go well, actually, it's really like this and like this. All traffic is stopped with the exception of the Broadway right turn. That at some point in the traffic light, this is what happens. So pedestrians can walk, all vehicle traffic is stopped, and Broadway gets the opportunity to make a right turn. The reason why we would need to add more time is that we can't have a person going across or making a left when the pedestrian is going.
I understand that. What is the time, though? Are we talking about 5 seconds, 10 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes? What are we talking about?
You would need at least 10 to 15 seconds to service Broadway, and you'd have to steal that time from another approach.
Okay. So we're talking about less than 30 seconds to make that turn in there to have the facility of pedestrian circulation within that sense. Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. So now on the same intersection, one of the comments that you made is on the green area where you extended the sidewalk, you said the crossing from north to south, it was shorter distance than what the current crossing is right now. Can you explain that? Because graphically, I see that as being longer. My preference will be to stay the crossing where it is right now, because it seems like a shorter distance now that you enlarging the sidewalk, I want to call it.
Sure. So this crossing may end up being similar in terms of length. This crossing would definitely.
Yeah, no,
be
that's, yeah, no, I'm not talking about that
Yeah.
one. Yeah, I'm talking about the one in Croton Avenue.
The one on Croton might end up being the same length or thereabouts. The advantage to this is that for a driver, if you're coming up making a right, the pedestrian is directly in your line of sight. You have this visual, they're right in that vision. When they're over here, they're in your periphery. So you start to accelerate around a turn, and now you have a pedestrian here, which is not a condition that you want. You want to create a situation where the driver and the pedestrian are very, very close in terms of eye contact. So while it may end up being somewhat similar in terms of length, there's better visibility from the driver to the pedestrian and vice versa.
So I can live with that. I can live with that. Yeah, the distance to me, it seems like it's going to be a lot shorter doing it diagonal the way it is. So let me jump on to, thank you. No, that's very helpful. I appreciate that. So can we go to Church Street intersection, please? The concept number 1.
And I just want to caveat, these are very conceptual. Obviously,
Yes.
if this was to come to design, things like that would get fleshed
Yeah.
out.
No, I understand that. Thank you. So on that one, on the concept of Church Street, so we are eliminating the parking, the few, I think it's like, I want to say maybe less than 10 parking spaces on the side of Church Street, right next to the church itself. We're eliminating all those parking spaces, correct?
In this concept, yes. Our thought was that we're able to reclaim, over 100 spaces on Route 9, so the loss of 6 here is workable, especially because you have parking on the other side. But there is an opportunity, if that is untenable, this could be reformatted to preserve some of those spaces.
Okay. And I would like to see more like another option than that one, because again, I understand we add in more parking spaces, but some of the parking spaces are not within the center of our downtown itself. So one of the things for me is how to create that balance. Because it seems like right now, we're keeping the ones on the other side, correct? And we creating that middle, okay.
Those would be untouched.
Okay, thank you. And we are creating 4 parking spaces right next to 200 Main Street, correct? On Highland Avenue.
Correct. For a minimum.
Okay. So that's helpful. So I'm kind of keep moving north. So can we go to that, what Omar was referring to on the green area there on the sidewalk itself? Because that area right now has a pretty big sidewalk as it stands right now. So I wasn't sure what the overlay is in there, but let me ask you a quick question. Did you guys look into maybe enlarging the portion in front of 200 Main Street and sort of kind of have a balance in between instead of doing that across?
We didn't, we certainly could. The one reason why we didn't want to change that curb line was just because this left turn is
Yeah.
somewhat of We call
Yeah.
it a negative turn. You're turning more than 90 degrees.
Yes.
So if you move this out, it would become
Will
harder
become,
to
got it.
make that turn.
Okay.
But it can be looked at. It absolutely can.
No, that makes sense. No, thank you. So I think overall, one of my concerns is we adding a lot of parking spaces in like along, if you keep going to the next concept, 2 and 3, I think. So in 2, we have a lot of parking spaces along the side, the west side, next to the community center. That's a hill, either going down, I guess, or going up, however you want to look at it. So reality is it who's going to be using those spaces? I guess I'm not sure if we don't have. I'm not asking you. I'm just making a statement within itself. It's like who will be using those cars? I'm not sure if that was a conversation that you had, or either when the public was engaged. That's one. Just throwing it out. Again, you don't have to answer that question. But the other ones, I'm curious to see. So you have produced. Do you have a map that delineates all the way down to Cedar Lane itself, or at least to Mavis, and what does that look like?
We do. We have. I took what I thought were going to be the 3 most
Okay.
interesting.
No problem.
slide.
Got it.
But
No,
this
I
is-
appreciate that. Yeah, definitely. No, thank you. What are we doing on Ellis Place, on Ellis Road itself? Are we doing anything on that road, or we just keeping it the way it is? Sure, we're not changing anything in that intersection. Okay, thank you, Dana. And for now, this is again, this is pretty helpful. Thank you. It solves a lot of the things that we are talking about. So I appreciate that. Like I said, I just had those concerns, and I think some of the stuff is I can pick either Dana or Bob's thoughts on maybe there's some insights that I'm not aware, but I can talk to them. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You good?
Yes.
Dana, did you say you wanted to say something? I mean, I have some comments, but did you? Okay. So thank you, Frank. I think this is great, and I think it solves for additional parking. My first impression was similar to what Manny just said. So who's going to park all the way there? But that's because I'm thinking of Route 9 as the old Route 9, where trucks are going at 60 miles an hour. Like, who the heck would want to park there? Well, I would park there if I knew that people were going at 30 miles an hour, not at 60. So you're actually, and I think you're also adding an opportunity, I'm hoping, that some of these businesses that used to thrive now don't really have parking. It's so loud. I don't know what I was doing. Oh, we were at the community center. We couldn't hear ourselves talk when we were outside because of how fast the traffic was going, mostly trucks. So I think this is great. I think it will actually invigorate, like it does in Tarrytown, where businesses would start opening up more because now there's parking in front of, maybe it's 2 or 3 spots, but it doesn't matter. That's enough to go in, buy something, and leave. So I think this is all great. I personally don't like these middle lanes. I have personally had friends who have gotten really hurt because there doesn't seem to be some sort of a rule about who gets to use that middle lane and when do you use it and how long can you stay in there before you make your turn. We have a car wash that uses it as its private little lane to go into a car wash, which I have complained about. But on balance, it's so far superior to what we have today. It just is. It's given the options. I think this is a very strong option to slow people down, maybe create some business opportunities as there used to be, and we saw that in the pictures. Thank you, Dana. To enliven that area, and if people want to go at 55 to 65 miles an hour, they should take a different kind of a road, not one that goes through the middle of villages. So I think on balance, this is just terrific. I have one question, which is before Mavis, there is an area that trucks park overnight. I don't actually know if they're supposed to park there or if they're not.
They're not, Mayor.
Currently, there are like 3 huge 16-wheelers. So So they're not supposed to?
They're
Okay.
not supposed to.
Okay.
We had those conversations in the past.
All right, so the question is, like, what might this plan, I'm looking at Maddie, what might this plan do to eliminate that opportunity for 16-wheelers? Because if it stays the way it is, they will continue to park there. So I never really understood whether that was allowed or not, but I got my answer. So maybe we'll take this opportunity to fix that problem as well, and it is a problem. The only thing I see, and I don't have a solution, just a question, Frank, when, and I like the greens, I know they're not green spaces. It'll be up to us to decide, do you want to have a little park area? Do you want to have a sitting area for restaurants? Do you want to, like, what do you want to do with it is really for the village to, at some point, get some recommendations. I'd be interested in recommendations you're offering. I mean, it could just be to beautify the downtown, which is becoming very concrete heavy, and it splits up visually. So I leave that for a later discussion. But what I am concerned about, which I did not see in the study, so Frank helped me out, loading and unloading. So depending on what time of the day you go, you captured my concern about what happens to all the commuters as commuting comes back, or maybe it won't come back, it'll be different, but that backup that occurs all the way downtown. It's a challenge, you addressed it, people will agree with you, people won't. So I'm putting a check mark next to that. But what I'm also going to ask about is loading and unloading. So there are delivery trucks that park, because there's enough room now, they park right in front of the stores, blocking people up, and people go around them. Is there any way to use this also as we look at Route 9 about loading and unloading? Because I don't know where these trucks are supposed to load and unload for the bodegas and the Army Navy store or whatever. Just don't see it really addressed here. Because if we get to where you want us to get to, or where the village wants to get to, which is that more businesses will open at Route 9, more cars will be parked, people in the community center will have 10 or 12 more spots to park. This is all great stuff. I'm very happy about that. Might make some, bicycle areas to park bikes. We'll work on the details. What's with the big delivery trucks to all these businesses, so many of which are food oriented? I don't see where that fits into that Route 9 diet, if it does at all.
So, Mayor, what we talked about actually at a very recent TAC was, you have kind of a blank canvas when it comes to the curbsides now. So you could designate certain portions of the curbside as commercial loading zones during certain hours. You now have that flexibility. So if you knew you had a cluster of businesses that received their goods between 7 and 10 a.m. on weekdays, you could sign and pass an ordinance that segment of curb is to be used by trucks loading and unloading. So instead of these trucks circling the downtown, they know they have a predictable spot. So that can all get flushed out, but the point is that there's some flexibility there.
Okay, fair enough. That requires a whole different conversation, but that's easy enough to do. Well, listen, thank you. Everybody's good? Yes? Terrific. Now I understand what the road diet is, and I think it will be much more in sync, as you said, once you pass by this miracle mile of being congruent to what's in the north and in the south, rather than people speeding up to Croton, because it's a highway until then, slowing down a little bit and then going, whoa, it's opened up again, and start speeding through our village. I will be happy to live here and see that people cross the street to get to the community center rather than run across hoping not to get hit. So thank you so much. I know it's only a sketch, but I'd be happy exactly as it is, to be honest with you. I think you guys did a really good job. I'm looking around because the staff is sitting here, for those of you on Zoom. I know a lot of people are involved, so yay, looking for the next update. Thank you very much, Frank, and to all of your colleagues.
Very welcome. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. You're on, Village Manager.
Next, we have an update from our village engineer, Paul Fraioli, and our water and superintendent, Andy Teese. We have recently gotten an estimate for the Indian Brook water treatment plant. As we anticipated, we knew it would be higher than we had estimated almost 3 years ago, because we had added components to the plant and increased the footprint. But we also knew it would be higher because construction costs are higher, labor costs are higher, mostly due to COVID. So we want to talk about that. This is probably the biggest investment the village has made and will be making in some time. It's an essential investment. And we want to bring you up to date with what's going on with the estimate, how we're looking to mitigate costs through grants, and how we are planning the bidding process going forward. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Paul Fraioli and Andy Teese.
Okay. Are you going to put the PowerPoint up?
We're ready right away. Sure.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Board.
Hello, Andy.
Hello, Andy.
Okay, I'm going to talk a little history about the plant and how we got here. So let's go to the next slide. This is basically, it's a status update. Provisions for the treatment plant and safe drinking water. So the village has a fundamental obligation to provide drinking water to homes, businesses, schools, institutions, and service the area that complies with all provisions with Safe Drinking Water Act. I think that was 1972. And other regulations created for the benefit and safety for the public. That's the ultimate goal. The primary objective of the new Indian Brook water filtration plant is to construct and implement the most efficient treatment processes that will meet the regulatory requirements and into the foreseeable future. This is something that we started about 10 years ago. This is with foresight after rebuilding our filters back in 2008, 2009. So a little history about the treatment plant. Next page. So the plant was originally constructed in 1930. The gatehouse was put in with the reservoir back in 1888. A little history back there. And we underwent major expansion in 1986. That was a pivotal decision back then. It was decided at that point the plant could either be 4 million gallons a day or 6 million gallons a day. The powers to be picked 4 million gallons a day, which is why we're here, kind of. The plant operates optimally up to 4 million gallons a day, but often we exceed that capacity. We haven't exceeded it often this year because even though it's hot, we've had lots of rain. So it's weather dependent. The flows of the plant are definitely weather dependent. Next sheet. So the current situation. So the source water supplies. We have the Croton Reservoir, and we are the only ones on the old Croton Aqueduct. And then we have the Indian Brook Reservoir, which is owned by the village. So the treatment consists in the plant of itself of pre-oxidation coagulation. I'm going to show you a slide on this, but pre-oxidation, coagulation, flocculation, settling, filtration, post-treatment chemicals added prior to distribution, and the clear well. Currently, the plant is meeting all water quality goals and standards, and the standards are based off of 10 state standards. So basically, it's best practices and how a treatment plant and a potable water system is designed, but it's design criteria that is monitored by the state, the EPA, and the county Department of Health. And that's really key because even on the filtration side, we often meet above our loading rates. Our filters aren't sized large enough to go over 4 million gallons a day, which is the next slide. So the distribution capacity or the plant capacity, the unit process sizing. So the design flow of the current treatment plant is 4 million gallons a day. The maximum flow in 5 years projected is 4.5, and then the peak flow in 25 years, we're talking 6.8 million gallons a day. Peak flow is peak hours in the summertime, could be peak hours in the summertime with a water main break. Everything gets designed based off of peak flow and works backwards. The existing Indian water filtration plant operates inefficiently when producing over 4 million gallons a day and poses a threat to the ability to maintain the treatment facilities, which means we might meet our filtration goals, but we don't meet our concentration times. CT, it's concentration time. That's the ability to deactivate viruses, cryptosporidium, giardia, the bad stuff that's in the water. The new plant will maintain the water quality and expand the capacity of the village's water system and meet the current projected future needs. So the big thing with what I'm going to talk about the changes here is, as we know, we had major taste and odor issues through the last 2 years. We handled it pretty well in-house with powder activated carbon, but those numbers have changed quite a bit as far as from New York City on the raw water side with algae blooms. So I've said the silver lining of taking 3 years to get the plant completed as far as the design is that we would not have found these issues that have happened the last 2.5 years. And this can be resolved with ultraviolet filtration systems and peroxide systems and the powder activated carbon, which is in the new design. So let's talk about the... So looking at the slide, on top shows exactly what we have right now, the raw water pump station, the oxidation, the mixing flock, settling, filtration, and the clear well. The big changes on the new plant, here, let me just pull this back for you. The biggest change of the new plant is that we have rapid mix flocculation, but the part that is the change is the dissolved air flotation. So you compare the dissolved air flotation to the settling on top. And what that means is a drop of water and particulates go through the plant and settle out, and it takes 13 times longer than the new plant, which is taking air and floating the sludge to the top. It's the opposite process. It was used originally in sewer technology, and with the organics and our raw water quality, it's going to help dramatically. And then the filtration, same on top as bottom, but a little bit newer technology. Clearwell is smaller, but the UV disinfection, and that's totally key. We have to add a lot of chlorine to our water to meet our concentration times to deactivate these viruses. This UV system can meet our MIB, taste and odor issues, can also meet our CT times, and will greatly reduce the amount of chlorine that we put in the water. And I think I've talked about this in previous meetings. When you add chlorine to water and it sits out in the distribution system, the longer it sits out there, the more byproducts you get that are unhealthy. We'll be able to lower that chlorine residual. Okay, let's talk about the cost. The current estimate to construct the new plant is $53,033,000. The addition of the poly-activated carbon, the pack system, the peroxide system I talked about, and the UV oxidation system increased the cost approximately $1.6 million. Retaining wall had to be incorporated in this for the pack system to build a building to put the powder activated carbon system in. And we also had to increase the site work at the plant. The additional mechanical equipment, the electrical piping, other modifications required to expand the building footprint to accommodate the new larger reactors. The reactors are huge. Increased the project by $8.8 million. So the remaining difference between the 2018 estimate and the current estimate are accounted for in general conditions and in indirect cost. I kind of wanted to make it simple because it's a lot of talking here, so I asked the engineers in our last meeting this last week. It's the second statement. So in 2018, the cost to construct the plant was $34 million, but that was none of these design changes that we came across in the last 3 years. So if the Indian Brook plant with all the changes were built in 2018 with today's design, it would be $47.9 million. So if you took the design that was just completed and did it in 2018, it's 47.9 versus today's cost is $53,033,000. So that's 3 years later of the exact same design. We wanted to kind of like give you apples to apples. Next sheet. Okay, you got it. So kind of like the industry standards, that kind of stuff, talked about this, but the past year, material pricing increased sharply, above the assumptions of the project. 2 items stand out as the primary increases: the copper, the structural steel. even example, we were getting prices this week on piping for our distribution system, 6-inch pipe. We need to order a couple of lengths of pipe. We used to pay $14 a foot last year. Now it's $22 a foot. So the costs are a lot. The new estimate is consistent with the engineering news record, the ENR cost between 2018 and 2021, which is 11.4% increase. The current construction market added an estimated 5.7 overall price project due to increased contractor overhead and profit. So if you took the 2018 number of the 47 million and what's roughly 11.4%, you come close to what came out in the 53 million. Minimizing the water ratepayer cost. Village of Ossining is working with national experts, water treatment plant design, construction to ensure efficiency throughout the project. That's why we switched to a different construction management firm instead of just having the engineering firm be our construction manager. It's kind of another firm that's watching to make sure that everything's in line, the numbers are in line. And we're expecting to bid this project in 2021. The reason why this is important tonight is without your support to borrow this money, the 60 million that we're talking about, we'll lose the grant status. And do you want to talk about that at all, Karen? Or?
So we were given the maximum amount of extensions. All of the grants that were awarded in 2019 are on somewhat of a delay due to COVID, particularly for capital expansion, anything having to do with capital improvements, major capital improvements. We were given the maximum extension to file the paperwork. Important to the state in giving the grant is an actual commitment from the village indicating that they're going to do this project. This is a big project. So typically, we would bond for a project once we have the final bid estimate. In this case, we would need to bond in advance of that based on the estimate that we received from Hazen and Sawyer. If we we are required to submit a resolution by October 1st to secure the $3 million that we have, so that we had received. So it's and Dale can talk about this too. It is not what we typically do, but it's not an uncommon practice. And Dale's actually working on a few different scenarios based on bond terms and other things that we can do so that we can make sure that we're doing this in an efficient way and actually how we use the borrow. Even if we borrow conservatively to make sure that we cover the cost of the project, we don't necessarily have to expend the band for the whole bond, and we can course correct as we go forward in terms of making sure that we're efficient and not incurring too much debt service.
Dale, did you want to mention how you plan on borrowing?
Good evening. Thank you, Manager Dettori and Village Board. Currently, I'm working with a rough estimate. The beauty of doing a bond resolution is that you're really just authorizing us to borrow up to a certain amount. It doesn't mean that you actually have to borrow that full amount. So if we approve a $60 million bond resolution, my intention is to borrow in pieces in accordance with the construction schedule to make sure we're funding only what we need for that current year, so to speak. So we're not borrowing money too far in advance, paying interest on funds while they're sitting, as well as you really cannot do that anyway, because you are not allowed to borrow funds and earn interest earnings over and above the rate that you are paying in interest to borrow the money in the first place. So I am working with bond counsel and our financial advisors to develop a plan. It really is a rough estimate at this point until we actually bid the project and have cash flow analysis at that point where we have more determined costs, timelines of actual work schedule. So right now, I'm just creating a budget that goes out to 2026. I might go a little further just to make sure, because as you know, we have been working on the rates, trying to build up to make sure that it's not a large impact to our water customers as far as a rate increase. As far as my analysis so far, I am seeing that we will be able to stay within a 5% rate increase while we bring on these portions of debt in order to complete this project at this point. So we'll discuss that further down the line. But we have been planning for this for quite a long time, and I think we're definitely in a okay place to keep our rates steady and not have too much of a negative impact in terms of budgetary concerns.
So, and we can, in addition to the 3 million or the 3.1 million we've secured to date, we know that we're receiving $2.5 million in American Rescue Plan money. That money can be used for water infrastructure projects. So while there's several different ways, and we'll be talking at future work sessions about how we would spend that money could be invested in the water treatment plant almost exclusively. So, and that would be another way we can make sure that we're serving the ratepayers by making sure that we're not seeing any greater than 5% increase, which we've been holding steady to for some time now.
Okay. I guess next steps.
That's it.
Okay.
Oh, is that, that's the final slide? Okay.
Wait, one last thing I wanted to say. So Dale, you were carrying over $2 million from last year, right? Surplus from the water fund that was unexpended.
Right, as well, when we have our auditors in to review our 2020 year end, one of the points will be that we did increase the water fund balance by about $2 million at the end of 2020. So that added to our current fund balance of an amount of, I believe, it's roughly 5 million. Puts us that, we're in a good place, and if we needed to use a bit of fund balance to do a smoothing effect, we'd be okay to do that as well.
And I calculated the New York City water bills today because we just paid one, the most recent one, for July, and we should have $1 million just alone in the New York City line unexpended by the end of the year. That's not all the other lines, so we are in good shape.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, for being here. Thank you, Dale. Questions or comments?
I can go. So the original in 2018, the 47 million, let's say, in that 47 million, did you have a percentage in there for change orders or stuff, unsurprised things that, pop up? Similar to what we did with, I think, where we did the air conditioning, where we added like 10,000.
So
Is that a projected
Dale,
number?
Well, in that 47 million, that's actual cost, and there are some contingencies for change orders.
Okay.
But we all kind of talked about it. With that 60 million, there is some contingency money. And Dale, do you have that number? Or you just give a percentage?
Yeah, just simple yes or no.
It's there.
Okay, that's
It's
all.
there,
That's fine.
Yes.
I don't need numbers.
we didn't,
I don't need numbers. It's a yes or no.
we had a larger contingency.
It's a
when-
typical thing on a project this size.
Yeah, like the dam where it was unknowns of a 100-year-old dam.
Right.
We had a higher contingency.
Right.
Something that's new, we have a lower contingency.
And then,
But there's
okay,
contingency in there, and we're really not going to know the true number until we actually bid
Right,
it.
right.
Just a little timeline with that. We're going to advertise for bids in December, and you would look for awarding it between December and actually a March award date. So it's
Yeah, that was kinda
there's
like-
like
I was-
there's timelines there. There's mandatory meetings like Paul could talk about. There's Wick's law. There's 4 separate primes. It's a huge job.
yeah, that was my next question. With it going out to bid, a projected start date. You're saying awarding in March. Are we looking at?
Yeah, you're looking at
Springtime.
you're advertising in I had it here. Hold on. We're talking about advertising it. I could just say those dates real quick. I took a screenshot. Advertise December 13th. Mandatory pre-bid meeting January walkthrough. January 31st contractor questions cutoff date. February 11th bid opening. March 9th recommended award. The registration of contract period ends April 13th. April 30th, substantial completion. So like after that, you'd probably issue notice to proceed. It's not on here, but I would
Right.
expect the second week in May
Okay.
on that. So
And-
it's a
What's the projected length, do you think, of this project?
37 months.
37?
That's
So
what they're
3 years. I imagine the contract, the contractors are going to ask for a percentage of overhead every year, a change. Usually that's a typical thing. I don't know if that's something you've dealt with, where we get, okay, just a question, that's all. I'm done.
Good?
Yep,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Shall we just go this way to the end?
Thank you. I'm good.
Okay, Dana? Questions, comments?
What was that word, flocculation?
Oh, she has not had the tour, she's
give
asking
you a
this.
tour.
What does that mean? That's my new favorite word.
So it's basically, so the water comes in negatively charged. We add a positive charged chemical to it. With mixing energies, it becomes a larger particle, so it could either be settled through flocculation, mixing energy is really flocculation, or we can float it.
That goes through the Gazula pump too, by the way.
I do need to take the tour, clearly. And this would be built, like, next to the current one, or?
Yeah, so as you come into the plant driveway, there's a low lift pump station by the main gate. It's the left-hand side, down in that gully. And most of the plant would be down in the ground. The highest level would be at the
So-
driveway elevation, so it's not so visually intrusive.
Okay. Well, I know that water's really important, and we're very lucky to have these water sources, I think, the village, so. And I know water quality and water taste are certainly something that people hold near and dear, and I know our water's usually been pretty good. But I do see, I mean, I think we have to do this. We see, projects coming online, they're gonna require water. And, it's certainly not an inexpensive endeavor. But it seems necessary. And you could probably assume it's gonna be more than your estimate in the final.
I hope not.
Let's hope
I
not.
mean,
Anytime I do work on my house, it's always
We-
more, but.
We are, in recognition of the times that we were in, this is a conservative estimate. We certainly cannot predict the future, but we are hoping that it was estimated very conservatively.
Do you think materials are gonna go back down? This is kind of an inflationary thing, right?
Not much.
Like, everything's up, right?
that's kind of, that would be more of the two trustees there.
I don't
You guys
think,
do.
they might go down a little bit, but I don't see it going drastically down. I mean, just to go on record, I see what you're saying. I'm in full support of it. So,
Yeah.
Did we talk about we did, was it in the presentation about, I just can't remember if we waited, there is no point in time where this gets less expensive to, wait or anything, so it's,
And just to, not to scare people, but the EPA is getting tighter on regulations justifiably. There's a whole new group in the EPA in New York State on harmful algae blooms. The regulations aren't even out yet, but the technology that we're putting in here will more than suffice handle these harmful algae blooms, because like you can have that just in our own reservoir, and our water is free. Our water is, it keeps us below the per capita charge. So when we buy New York City water, we don't pay 3 times the rate. These are key elements that we need to keep the water safe.
Manny?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Andy and Paul, and everyone that actually has been working on this project for a few years now. I'm not talking about the numbers of how much it's going to be, because we sort of expected that a couple years back. I just want to have a little bit of point of clarification on my head, because I was writing a bunch of numbers in here. So we asking $60 million for a bond.
Correct.
We do have $3 million for a grant, and we have $2.5 million additional money that we could potentially use the whole thing for the water. So if I add those numbers, it's actually more than $60 million. So are we asking the plant to be $60 million in total, or $60 million plus the $3 million and $2.5 million? Because if that's the case, I will ask you guys to tell me it will be $60 million minus the $3 million and the $2.5 million that we can use.
I think Dale, are the grants inclusive or exclusive of the bond? Are they in addition to the bond? In other words, is this a $65 million project?
That is what we would like to have approved for the bond, without the grant funding included to the cost of the project or the ARPA funds at this point. Because we really haven't discussed that either. Because we have not gone to bid yet, we really don't know what the final costs are. So if we go to bid and those costs now come in higher, and that's what we're engaged with, because that's what the bids came in at, then we are hopefully covered, because we're approving a bond up to but not to exceed $60 million. When we actually need the money is what we're going to physically pay on. So we might approve $60 million, but in the end, we only go to the market to borrow 50. And so in the end, we're only going to pay for debt service on what we physically borrow. So this just gives us a window that we can go to the bond market for up to $60 million if we need to.
Also, the grants are drawdown grants, so we have to expend the money before we can get it back for the grants.
No, I understand.
Okay, so, but you would be able to
They
use
always
the
are.
But you would be able to use the grant money to pay down the debt service.
No, but I just want to, just kind of as a point of clarification, I want to make sure that we all understand that, it's not just $60 million.
Yep, it could be.
It could be more than $60 million, but we do have a buffer that is not part of the $60 million, but is part of the grant money, pretty much the money that we have allocated as a grant.
Or fund
Or
balance.
fund.
Yep.
So my next question is, if it comes down to try to figure this out, are we looking to value engineer this at some point of time? Because at some point we can say, look, it's going to be $80 million. And even if we have the $3 million and $2.5 million of potential, we could be using some of that money for this. $80 million is not part of this whole picture right
Yeah,
now.
like-
I'm just saying, I'm just throwing out a number.
If a crazy number came in, we would have to look at something like that, but the downside is you would have to start over, because you would obviously have to get health department approval, planning board approvals, all that stuff. But we'll look at that if we had to.
But
We can't value engineer. I would not suggest value engineering if the plant comes in below 60 million, because it's already designed and all that. But if we
understand
had
that.
to at that point, we'd have to look at every option. And that's the beauty of it, is you guys can go out to bid. We can go out to bid with the whole project. It doesn't mean we're forced to award it. We're in a good position that way. Just because we bid it doesn't mean we have to award the project or borrow on it. We're not gonna know until we get the bids in.
No, look, the market itself is weird, sure. We know materials are high, and we know all that stuff is a little bit unbalanced. For what I've been hearing, for what I've been seeing, at least from some contractors, is prices are coming down. They're not gonna come down to where they were a year and a half ago, but they're sort of getting to a point that is a balance now. I don't know what that means. I don't know if it's a good way for us to figure it out if we go out in January instead of December, which at the end of the day, it's not going to make that much of a difference anyway. So, I'm supportive of the project. I just want to make sure that, we do not exceed something that we are.
Can't afford to pay.
Exactly, because, by the numbers from 3 years ago, we're talking about a big difference, regardless, even if we put the plant right now, we're talking about a $20 million difference from 34 to 53 right now. Besides the additional stuff that we needed to add because of what happened a couple of years back. So I get that, but it's still $20 million difference.
Yep, and just alone, that's kind of why we did that 2018 number. It's 47 versus 53. That's years of escalation cost, pandemic, and what we're in. The economy
No, I
we're in.
understand that.
Yeah.
And the stuff that, like I said, when we did the changes, I was supporting, and I'm still supportive of this project.
Great.
And I think we need to go move forward. So thank you, Andy. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Hi, Andy. I think it's great. I really have a different kind of feeling. I'm not very excited. Karen and I have been speaking quite a bit about this. When I started, which was after Manny, was 24, conservative. It was 36, we're conservative. Now I'm looking at net value of money, so it's really 47, not 36. At the end of the day, it's doubled. And we were told, respectfully, Dale, that it was always conservative. And yet, it's like a lot of money for a village of our size and income levels that we have. It feels a lot like we're over a barrel. It's not a good feeling when you're a trustee to sit here and say, well, that's just the way things are, and water is really important. I see, needs to be a plan at this point where it's too much. What's the number where we're not doing this, right? Is there a number, or does everybody that listened to this presentation say, so if the bids come really high and metal and copper go up, we'll pay $100 million, we'll pay $120 million. There has to be an assessment and an acknowledgement that, I'd like to live in a 4-bedroom in Manhattan, but I'm going to tell you that my husband and I can't afford it. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter after a while. So what would be great in the presentation are two things: the timeline that you stated, and by the way, bravo on a very condensed and concise report. Because I found every single deck to tell a story that I could actually understand. It was really I really get it, although I know that you're dying to explain more about things.
I am. I can't. I have to slow myself down. Yeah.
I see your body language, man. You are holding yourself back. I feel like Paul is texting you saying, don't say more. Because I know you want to explain why the situation's what it is. And I know you're dying to explain, look, there's a supply chain. I'm still waiting for my car. It's been a month because they're missing parts that are supposed to come from who knows where. I'm sure. I'm sorry? Oh, well, we won't get down that path. Let's not get there. It's still, at some point, somebody sits there and goes, just like I do, you guys approved something at $24 million. Don't give me the, future value of money. I don't need economics lesson to know that. And don't tell me that's just the way life is. When is it too much, right? So I would really like you guys to think about that. And I know you're not happy. You would rather come in here and say, hey, we said this and that's what it's coming. In fact, we're saving you $3 million. I mean, of course, this is not what we wanted. But there comes a point, and that's missing in when do we say enough? Because, or is there never enough? Because
No, I mean,
water
honestly,
water is water. I mean, I don't know.
honestly, we were hoping, low 40s. And then when we were kind of in shock when we saw this too, we knew the cost in the last couple of years were going to go up based on the equipment changes, the buildings, building a bigger footprint, that kind of thing. But it's out of our control. And we're not going to know the true number until we bid it.
Okay, so we'll have more.
We'll make that
It
decision.
just, it doesn't feel great, but it also doesn't feel great for you guys. But, we actually have a fiduciary responsibility to the people we represent. And while Dale, I think, has done a great job saying 5%, but 5% a year of an increase actually is a pretty quick multiplier. It's not nothing. What I really wanted to ask is, what are the three key trends? Forget supply chain and all that. What's the three key trends that you're building this water plant to? Is it an increase in population? Is it a difference in water usage? What is the purpose for the next, you said 25 years. What's the goal?
It's based off
of
the comp
this?
plan. So the 25-year out number was 6.8 million on the peak demand. It's based off of that. It's 25 years out. They did the Hazen and Sawyer did a water demand study. It would cost the village about $100,000 to prove all those numbers. Plus, the comp plan also had their study. The numbers lined up, and so it had to be built for that maximum flow. But the other determining factor is the water quality. I'm very concerned with the water quality at higher flows. The numbers are dramatically changing, and secondly, I didn't even talk about lead and coppers, but the lead and copper rules are changing huge in the next 2025.
And is there?
So we don't have those processes in place to protect the lead and copper that they're going to want us to protect. That's why it's so important. Like there's so many ancillary benefits to this on staying within compliance.
Are there any environmental issues, since we're a waterfront community, that also affect the water plant that we should know about?
Is there anything you can think of?
In the next 25 years, did you look at rising water, all that stuff?
I don't think it'll affect us up there. I mean,
Okay.
it's down, it's not close
Believe
to
it
the
or not, a question I got, like, not that long ago tonight, somebody texted me, because there's a belief that the environment, a lot of the studies about
Yeah.
the environment, so
We
zero
covered
effect on
we
your-
covered that with the $6 million upgrade to the spillway.
Okay,
We needed to handle the flow of weather changes, 500-year storms, so that the spillway could handle it, so that it wouldn't damage the existing filter plant or a new filter plant. So that aspect was taken. Yeah, new intakes, obviously, so we can take water stratified from different elevations at better water quality based on the temperature of the water. And then we talked about the green roof a long time ago, but
right.
the green roof, along with stormwater storage that's in the ground, it's key. We need the green roof to work so that we can actually put the plant there. There's not enough vegetation to absorb that water without the green roof. So there's so many facets to this.
No, look, I think it's fascinating. To that point, thank you. I'm not upset with you guys. I'm
Yeah.
just unhappy with, that we've now doubled the amount of money after we spent so much time being conservative to begin with, when we all voted on it. It was a big deal to vote on this. The thing I would recommend, a little PSA, if you haven't, and not just Dana, but if you haven't taken the tour, whether you're staff, whether you're tourists in our community, it's like a degree in engineering in the best of ways. When you see the water plant, and when you see where it sits, and when you see the surrounding, and when he talks about green roof, every time I go in there, it really will tell the whole story of why this is important and how important water is to the community. So thank you.
Thank you.
Just add the timeline for me, please, for the next presentation. The one that you did off your cell phone. That would be just helpful. We do. I think that Stuart had asked us that we need to vote for resolution for the approval for the bond, correct?
That was Dale, I didn't say anything.
Oh,
So
Well, I
we will
thought
have, we
sorry,
will have a
Stuart.
resolution for you.
for next week, or not?
I think a work session first, right?
We'll
What are
we'll
we
probably
having
do
now? I
a
thought this
work
was a
session
work
when,
session.
do you want to, Dale, it's up to you. We had thought, you had done a good job of explaining what I thought you would have to do in a different work session, so we may be ahead of the game here, so,
Why don't you guys just write us an email and tell us what you need?
We'll update you,
Because we're
but
not
we-
voting during a work session, and I heard everybody was in support of a bond, which is what we were asked to do here. This was about the bond and an explanation
Exactly.
of all of the costs and prices, and and where we are, and you need a bond from the board to approve it. So I guess the board is saying unanimously that we are willing to do that as soon as somebody gets it in front of us. Okay.
Okay,
Thank you,
so much.
sir.
Thank you.
So next up is Assistant Village Manager Maddi Zachacz and our village engineer Paul Fraioli will be talking about the RecycleRight app and giving a little demo on it. It's something that's being used by over half the communities in Westchester.
Something like that.
And it's a way that we can reduce our paper use and but also get out more effective information to people about recycling and recycling the right way. So with that, I will turn it over to Assistant Village Manager.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Good evening. Good evening, board. So this is a fun agenda item, and it's a little bit interactive. So I think that you'll enjoy it.
Excuse me, Maddy. Paul, are you going to sit there and let her say that after the presentation you guys did, which was full of fun?
Oh, I mean, that wasn't meant to be a comparison necessarily. Just making a statement. So we were approached over the summer by Sustainable Westchester about a product that, as Manager Dottori mentioned, is being used by many other of our neighboring communities in Westchester. So the current list is the City of New Rochelle, Town of Greenburgh, the Village and Town of Harrison, Village of Ardsley, Bronxville, Elmsford, Hastings, Irvington, Mamaroneck, Pelham, Tarrytown, Tuckahoe, and then our friends in the town of Ossining. The town actually kicked off this project back in August of 2019, and basically what it consists of is moving the sanitation and recycling schedule from a paper copy that gets mailed to you usually around the holidays that you hang on your fridge to something that you can access either online through a web browser or through an app. On your phone. So, of course, there will still be folks who say, but I want a paper calendar. And that's okay, because the program does have an allowance for that. They would be able to call the folks at DPW and have them print them a address-specific calendar and have it mailed to their home. But this isn't just about saving paper. It's also about saving money. So in the average year, we spend about, between actually producing the calendars and mailing them, about $8,000 for the village of Ossining. The price for a year worth of this service would be $5,000, but typically they get a 50% rebate from the state DEC because they're saving paper. So it would cost us about $2,500 a year to provide the service, which is arguably a lot more convenient than spending about $8,000 a year and actually printing and mailing it. So Paul and I had the opportunity to have a demo with Sustainable Westchester earlier in the summer, and then we had a second demo with Paul and all of his staff, who are the folks that get a lot of these questions typically. You come up and join me, please.
Thank you, Maddi. Yeah, so I had some reservations. It's a technology-driven thing, but that's just kind of how I'm wired, because I know how much people like to get the paper calendar. But when I just kind of mentioned it in passing that Maddi and I had met with Sustainable Westchester in front of the staff, and I was just having a kind of feel my way through how they thought about it, they were all over it. They were like, do you know how many people call here? We send them a calendar, they have it on their fridge, we tell them how to look at it, and they still need to call us. So what this app does is it takes address-specific information, which we've already provided the address information to Sustainable Westchester in advance of this meeting. We were able to put it together from the assessor's office, and you literally have all the information for your specific house at your fingertips on the app or the website if you want to go to the browser. It's everything: how to dispose, when to dispose, other disposal options that aren't offered by the village, like the county hazardous waste. It's all very beneficial, and I think that in addition to the $2,500 really nominal cost, we might even receive more returns on the investment through education and people recycling more appropriately than they do already. And we're pretty high up. I mean, we're right around 50 to 55%, which is just a little above the county median on materials that are produced, disposed of rather, versus recycled in the village. So we're proud of that because it wasn't that way a long time ago, but it is now, and everybody's tuned into it. But it's nice when the residents are tuned into it, and I think this is going to afford them the ability to do that even better than they already do.
Okay, well, with that said, I'm going to show you a very short demonstration of just some of the things that can be done. I'm going to show you, this is the Town of Ossing's website. So basically, this is they call it the widget that you can embed within your website. And again, you can also get an app on your phone that you can get notifications sent to you directly. So if you say, my address is 123 Main Street, I want a notification at 6 a.m. every day, it's time to take out the garbage, you get your notification to your phone that it reminds you to do that. It's very customizable. You can set up exactly how you want the alerts to come to you and also for what. So if you take a look here, I've put in the address 25 Fowler, which is our water treatment plant. So you can put in your address right here. And because that's in the Town of Ossining, which is a community that's covered, it shows me my calendar. So which day of the week I can put out what thing. So say I have no idea, what is e-waste? Click on e-waste, it tells me exactly what that means. So there's really no question about what I'm supposed to be putting out that day.
Is this live right now?
Yes.
Okay, so where's the Spanish version of this?
Oh, I'm getting there.
Okay.
So they actually have, I think it's 10 different languages, but we actually had one of Paul's staff speaks Portuguese. And so we said, well, why don't we give it a shot? So we switched it into Portuguese mode, and she was very happy with the translation. She thought it translated perfectly. But you see right here in the widget, you have English. You can drop down to a variety of different languages, and the same is true on the app. Okay, so again, here's the calendar. So if you want to get a reminder and you don't want to download the app, you can do it here through the web browser. You can say how you want it. I want an email, I want a text message. They actually also have an auto dialer. So if it's someone who's maybe not comfortable getting text messages or emails, they can have their home phone ring at 7 o'clock every time it's time to take out the trash, which is, sort of an interesting option.
6:30.
6:30. In addition, this is something that can be controlled by the folks in the DPW office. So in case there is some sort of emergency, they need to change the pickup schedule at the last minute, they can pop right in and send out an emergency alert to everyone who has asked for such a thing to say, hey, we're not going to make it to you today. There's a snow-related emergency. Pickup date is now changed to Thursday, something of that nature, which will then also be reflected in the widget and on the website. If we go back, you can also say, I want a calendar. You can add it to your Google Calendar, you can add it to Outlook, you can print one, or again, they will have the contact information for the DPW office, so you can call and say, can you please mail me one? And the cool thing about the calendar, remember we're at 25 Fowler Avenue, is when you print your calendar, it tells you right at the top, so you know you're in the right place. It's address specific. And then it tells you if you have any questions, call the Town of Ossining Highway Department. And again, it gives you all the little insignias for the different things that need to get changed on each day. And it is live, so in case there's a change mid-year in the schedule, this will be updated, as opposed to something on a printed schedule where you might not be able to do that as easily. The other super cool feature is called the Recyclopedia. So if we click on that and then say, I have a plastic bottle and I don't know what to do with it. You type in plastic, a couple things might come up. Go to plastic bottle. And again, this is community specific. So if we do things a certain way in the village of Ossining that they don't do in other communities, this is information that we can customize. So it tells us lid can be kept on for recycling. Our best option is to rinse and recycle and put it in commingled, what goes in commingled. And again, this can all be translated into all of those different languages. So we have all of this at our fingertips. And then finally, need help. This is something that's actually monitored by the folks at Sustainable Westchester, so it's pretty timely. If you do have a question or if there's something that's not working properly, you can get in touch with them, and then they know how to get in touch with DPW if it's something that they are not able to fix. So if you see I have a problem with a missed pickup, it's going to say, okay, where do you live? I'm going to say Town of Ossining. Here's the email address where you can get someone, and here's the direct phone number. Was there anything else that I missed here, Paul? Well, the cool thing about it from our side is the data, right? We can pull some pretty cool data from this, which I unfortunately can't show you from here. But
year-end data, tonnages, etc. All good stuff that we like to have at the end of the year already.
And also about the alerts. How many people signed up for what? How many people searched for plastic bottles? How many? There's a lot of really interesting data that, again, it's the app itself, which is called Recollect, but here it's called RecycleRight Westchester.
I was surprised, excuse me, Maddie.
Yeah,
I
of
was
course.
surprised because it is so new in some communities that there's thousands of people in these communities that use it. It's not just a couple of people that like the app and they downloaded it. So I think it's going to catch on. I'm excited about it. The office staff is very excited about it, and I think it's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say, unless anyone has any questions, is that, they told us since the town picked it up about 2 years ago, they get about 2 or 3 phone calls a month from people who live in the village that thought that they could use it but can't, and so are very excited to see this coming, hopefully. So, happy to answer any questions or show you anything else on the widget.
Where should we direct people to go to get this?
We're not there yet. So once you're going to have a resolution before you next week to sign the contract, and then we'll go live within the next month, I would imagine, 60 days. And so once that's the case, Jaime is actually going to be able to embed the widget in our website, and it'll also direct folks to, just like here, you can get it on the Google Play or the Apple Store. And we can think of some creative ways to get the word out, just to make sure we haven't missed anybody. We've got a little bit of time before January to do that.
Thank you. It's great.
Is this like I get the analytics part, but is there a way to message people? I mean, the app is only as good as the person using it, right? If you don't feel you need it because you know all the stuff, you're not going to really download the app. You just don't need it. Not because you're not happy with it. Well, you may not need it. You know your schedules and all that. But the communication with the consumer, I get the emergency alerts. That's cool. I mean, I'd love to have the rules. We've talked about how to educate the public about you're not supposed to, the hours if you see your neighbor doing it, call this number. Like, is there a way to actually target message by household or not?
They did talk about
Yeah.
targeting by neighborhood. I'm trying to recall, this was like probably 2 months ago we had this presentation,
Yeah.
but targeting by neighborhood, like if they have noticed that not many people in neighborhood X have downloaded the app based on the addresses searched or whatever, that you can do some sort of a targeted campaign, but I'm not sure if that's exactly what
It's not
what
exactly
you're
what I
asking. Yeah.
asked, but
You could send out
that would have been smart of me to ask. So let's pretend that I asked that question. So basically, Sustainable Westchester is on the back end, not our people.
Right.
Right? You're purchasing this from Sustainable. We don't get a discount because both the town and the village are in
It's
this.
based on population.
Right, well, then we'll be paying more than them. And it's commercial and residential, so it's, yes, no?
You guys don't do commercial, right?
we do. We have a dumpster program.
Okay.
They're appended to an address, so we can work that out. I think
Okay,
I think what you were getting at, I think, is a blast, kind of like send it to everybody that has the app.
Well, I was thinking like there's an address that continuously violates the rules. It would be nice to send to them and their neighbors that,
Yeah.
we've noticed that, you're putting things out, on Sunday when it should be on Monday, and I'm making up the days.
Get it.
But it's only as good as if somebody actually opens that information, so.
Big thing for
yeah.
us is the holiday schedule. It's really sometimes it's ignored because people are not familiar of the municipal holiday versus typical holiday where we're not off because the dump is open, so the guys come in and collect. So it's
Well, I think
having
there's
that
a lot-
information
yeah.
out is a big deal.
I think there's a lot of, this is only in the right direction. I don't know in relation to other communities, how much we're still gonna have to mail to people who don't use computers and aren't comfortable with apps. I don't know if typically it's 10% and we might be 20%, so you're still gonna have postage and you're still gonna have paper up to a point, and then eventually you don't, like everything else. Eventually you say, I'm really sorry, we'll post it in a couple of locations and that's it. Is there a tutorial video on this, like what you just did?
I don't believe that there is, but that's not to say we couldn't record one.
I would just suggest, it's a really easy thing to do on Zoom. You could do it yourself, just the two of you, exactly what you did now, which we just recorded, because it's being recorded now. But to actually say, if you're concerned about this, this is what it does, a 3-minute, and you could actually post it on the website to explain to people why they should go and try it out. I mean, frankly, I'd give a little bonus dollar for all the people that do download it, because I think it would be actually better for the community for more people to do that. So this is great. I mean, the savings is sort of nice, but it's bigger than that, because it's savings every year, and I'm assuming that there's less work for your staff, because of
Well, I think inevitably the phone calls will drop.
Right.
And everybody knows they can just log onto the app. I know they're already looking forward to telling people to download the app is their first response to a question like that, or maybe they should try the app or something like that. They're, you know, they're ready.
Okay.
They're ready.
So, great. Usually I speak last. I somehow jumped in.
Well,
so-
just, how, would leaf pickup fall into this in any way? Like
Yeah.
targeting neighborhoods?
Does
Yeah.
organic, yeah.
Oh, you mean
Like in the fall?
vacuuming?
Yeah,
Well, we
vacuuming, you
have
know what I'm
a-
saying? Because, you know, I might put my leaves out and you come through, boom. And then the neighbor does it and he missed you by a day.
Yeah, I have
Oh,
to
then
look
it's
in
a
that because
callback.
right now we have organic
You mean a
collection.
vacuuming thing?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of hard to predict. It's all workforce generated. But it will definitely promote. If you put it in a bag, it'll get picked up every week.
Right.
And it's remarkable how many people caught on to that, because I could tell you intrinsically when we started bags as an option, because I don't remember any of you being here when we first presented legislation to make people bag, and everybody was on board until the board meeting. Then they changed it, but we still made it available, and people really jumped on. I'm going to say year after year it seemed to go up like 5 or 10%. Everybody's like, oh, I could put this stuff in a bag and they'll take it every Thursday versus a pile in front of my house that sits there for 2 or 3 weeks. I'm doing that. And they do. And we sell the bags and Sue sells the bags and it's all good. And it's so much easier to handle. We send around an organics truck, and for the guys to go there and go boom, boom, boom with the bags versus, you know, the methodical vacuuming it up.
So that was more my question. If there's a way to communicate, like we have lots of ways to communicate, but let's just say for the sake of argument, year one, 35% of the community downloads the app and all that. Now they have it. Is there a way to send not just warnings because there's a snowstorm or a holiday, but actually communication, like with advice on how to do things or whatever? It's just another opportunity to touch the consumer. It would be just cool to know if it's available. Obviously, only for those that are using it.
I'm sure we have a lot to learn, but again, the office staff is very excited.
All right. All good? All good? Oh, excuse me. Did not realize.
It's okay. Thank you, Mayor. I tend not to do this, but actually, when my wife was in the town, she was very excited about this because she was part of that, and she said, "You should talk to Paul about this."
Oh, she talked to me herself.
I know she did. And I said, well, let me see what happens. So 2 years later, here we are.
Yeah, well,
So thanks, Paul. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, I guess, but nothing to do that. I'm actually very excited. You know what is funny though, just as a personal note, I actually bookmark the calendar on my phone, even though I have a printout in the refrigerator. But I'm the one who goes outside, and before that I usually just check just to make sure that I'm taking the right container out on the curve. So I have that. So I think there's having an app is definitely going to be useful. So just, Maddi, refresh my memory again, please. And I'm sorry, I wrote down 2,500. So is that an annual fee?
So, sorry, the annual subscription fee for the village based on population is $5,000. But every year, thus far, that Sustainable Westchester has been running the program, they have gotten a reimbursement grant from the New York State DEC Municipal Recycling Program, which is 50% of the subscription fee. So I forget exactly how Neha explained it, but it's like we get a credit when they get the credit, basically. So for all intents and purposes, it's $2,500 a year because we get that credit before we paid the next time, if that makes sense.
So are you asking what is it without the credit?
No. So my next question is, so my next question is, how much are we spending on mailing this? I think you did say that.
I did
So,
say.
yes.
I have that information from our treasurer.
Said it was 8,000.
It's
Was it
about
8,000?
8,000. I can tell you the breakout specifically. Last year it was $5,835.34 for the printing itself, and then for the bulk mailing was $2,200-ish.
How many people do you mail it to?
The whole
the
building.
bulk mailing in the village has over 6,000 or 7,000 addresses, and they get delivered through the post office as a bulk mail.
Okay.
One thing I should mention, 'cause I'm sorry, what came up was we asked about the use of private information that's provided to the app regulators, and if there's security in that information won't be shared. And It is not. It's specifically for that app. There's no selling of private information or anything like that. And I think once we get this contract, Stuart will confirm the same. So people should not worry about sharing their address information with an app or their phone information with an app, because there's no other intent for this app other than the calendar.
But the addresses are public information anyway,
Yeah, but they're gonna have cell phones if they want, or emails
if they
and such.
want it.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, then, Maddie, thank you for that. So we are saving money, no matter what we're looking. I mean, we do have
Oh,
to do some
100%.
printouts. Let me ask you a silly question. So if I request a calendar, a paper calendar for this, who is sending that paper calendar? Is it you guys, or is it
Well, I mean,
their
there's so
app?
many avenues. I mean, we're gonna have it on our webpage, so if someone's astute enough to go on the page and print the
They
PDF,
can just print it out.
they
So
can print
that
it.
was my other question. So we're still gonna have
Some
that
people
app
ask for us to
available.
mail it to them.
Yeah.
I
We
can
do
show you
a lot.
that right here. So if you click Get a Calendar, you can, like I said, take it to Google, iCal, Microsoft, or you can print it. And then it'll print out just like this. You can change it to 1 month per page, so you can have the giant, boxes and whatever. And then if it doesn't work out, if your printer's out of ink, you can call the town highway department right
They
here.
can send it.
Yeah.
I know. So that's fine. I
Okay.
appreciate
We're
it.
actually gonna move, not to digress too much, but I was talking to Andy, next year we're gonna move to making the annual water quality report digital as well, because that's another printing expense that it used to be required. Now the health department says you don't have to actually mail it. You just need to post it and make it available.
Okay, cool.
So that's,
Fabulous.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Was it
Thank
fun?
you. I think Andy's was more fun, but
Okay,
it's
fair-
okay.
fair
No,
enough.
this was great. I actually didn't know when I saw it on the agenda what the heck it was, so thank you. Good. Next.
Okay, so next we have Corporation Counsel, Stuart Kahan. Our building inspector is out this week, but I do believe our planning director is in the audience. Maddie, if you could bring him over. We will, is he here?
Yep.
Okay, good. I'm sorry.
Hello, Jaime.
So we'll be.
Hi, gentlemen.
They'll be talking, thank you, we'll be talking about a building permit application policy change.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. The change is simply that if there is an outstanding permit, the building department will not issue a permit for another project on the same property, with the only exception being that they will issue a permit if it is to resolve an open order to remedy or appearance ticket. So if you want
Stuart, you're freezing up. I don't know if you could hear us or not. He's in the building, right? Well, you're frozen. You might be able to hear us, but you're frozen.
Turns out that, that's from your end, you guys are frozen.
We're frozen? Everybody's
I
frozen.
can talk to the three of you.
Well, we can hear you.
You were frozen, you're back now, I'll start again.
Okay.
That there would not be any building permit issued in the event that there are open permits on a property. But if the exception would be that if there is a permit that is being issued to clear a violation that has been issued by the building department, that permit will be issued. We already do not issue building permits or COs if there are fees or charges that are owed on the property. This would simply expand that so that building permits would not be issued. There are a lot of open building permits going way back in the village. This would be one means of allowing the building department to essentially sort of keep track of those and also make sure that nothing new is issued on a property until the old permits are taken care of. So it's just a policy change. It does not require a change in code.
It requires us to vote on it, though, right?
Nope, does not. But since it's policy, I thought it would be appropriate that you folks be made aware.
Right. And this is for the property, not for a company. So if I have 5 buildings, you're only looking at that property and what's open, not all of my properties?
That is correct. This goes by property.
So, Mayor, interesting you bring that up, and I was going to ask that question to Stuart. So actually, it's funny, I'm actually dealing with something not with that nature, but New York City Building Department actually changed their policies in regards to applications and actually starts taking an effect on Monday. And what that is if you're asking for a building permit for building X, the owner of building X has to provide you with information of any other building that you own, and it has to make sure that there's no open permits, or actually not open permits, but violations on those other buildings, or if you own any money to that. And based on that information, for what I was told by the expediters in New York City, is that, it will be, you will have to pretty much be up to date with all the properties that you own on the area itself. So I was actually not sure if that will be something that we should be looking into it as well.
Wasn't contemplated at this point, but if it is something that the board is interested in, I could certainly make the inquiry to Joe and
Comments, questions? Anybody? Oh, what is happening? Well, some people are frozen, not everybody is. Okay.
You were frozen again for a couple of seconds there, folks.
So are you, yeah,
Yeah,
no one's frozen by you.
you guys too. We're having a freezing
I mean,
thing.
it's not bad, it's just that it's a weird thing. Okay, so the thing about legislation is the intent. I understand this is not legislation, it's just that we're legislators, is the intent of this. So if I understand this right, the intention here is that if you have things out, you want to reduce the number of open quality tickets by making sure that if a property has some open items, that it gets closed, because you won't get a building permit unless you do that. Is that correct?
But it's actually it's open building permits, Mayor, it's not open violations.
Okay, so it's open building permits, and you're trying to reduce the number of open building permits. Is that the goal here?
We are trying to reduce the number of open building permits by not issuing new permits on the same property. That's correct.
Okay, so I would suggest that you look at the upside and downside of expanding that to owners by limited liabilities or corporation, because if that's your goal, you would actually accomplish that goal faster and deeper if somebody owned multiple buildings. If you did that, it would be the same as doing something to the DMV for a car versus the owner of multiple cars at the same address, depending what your goal is and what your desired outcome is. So just food for thought. I don't know what the downside of expanding it to a corporation or an individual with multiple properties. What would be the downside? What would that look like? I think you'd get to your goal a lot faster if you did that.
I can just tell you though, Mayor, from looking at the list of open permits, virtually all of them are different owners.
Okay.
It's not,
Or at least they're under different limited liabilities. They have different corporate structures, even if they're the same. Okay, so I don't see any comments on the board, so from my point of view, oh, excuse me, Dana.
I have a question. If somebody has an open permit, what does that mean? That means they took the permit out to do work, and either they didn't do the work, or they did it and then it was never inspected?
It could be a few different things, Trustee White. One, it could be that the permit was taken out and the work was never done, which means all we need to do is just clear the permit. The other is that the work was done and we were never called for an inspection.
Right.
We have that for many, many properties dealing with solar installation. The solar companies did not come back and did not file the necessary paperwork with the village. So we have many, many homes with open electrical and solar permits. So what it means is that in some cases the work was done, but we have either not conducted a final inspection, or we've not gotten the necessary paperwork to sign off and complete the permit. So it can be both.
Okay. And if you have an open permit and you go to sell your house, it's going to be a problem, right?
That's where this
Yeah.
usually comes up.
Yeah, yeah.
Often-
Word to
often
the
does.
wise.
Particularly, it's a problem with permits that were issued, let's say, 10, 15, whatever years ago, and someone put in a new basement and never, got a permit, but never got it inspected. Now it's got to get inspected, and that creates a problem during the closing process. So yes.
There's no fines involved in this, it's like a cleanup.
No, well, there may well be fines because, well, if it has resulted in an OTR or an appearance ticket, there'll be one thing. If none of that has happened, then it's not necessarily a fine, unless, of course, they've done work without a permit at all, which is a completely different.
Right, that's a different scenario.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Next. Okay, thank you. Next is, we had received advice from our capital markets advisors. They believe that there would be a real benefit to the village to refund remaining fund balances that are due on our 2011, 2012, and 2013 bond issues. So our treasurer, Dale Brennan, is going to talk us through that.
Thank you, Manager Dettori. Good evening, Village Board. Our fiscal advisors have performed an analysis on refunding or refinancing our 2011, 12, and 13 open bonds into one refunded bond. The current unpaid principal balance at this point is $5,220,000. With the 2011 bond carrying interest rate between 2.5 to 3.75. The 2012 serial bond currently carrying an interest rate between 2 and 3% through 2032, and the 2013 serial bond carrying interest rates of 3% and 4%. Through 2000 downturn, it also lowered interest rates where we can now take advantage of the lower interest rate by refinancing the bond principal. They are they're an bond market in September. But it's currently at $500,000 in savings over the next 13 years. With the
You're okay on your laptop?
uh,
Yeah. Dale, we can't hear you. Can you take 30 seconds and go back, please? Still no.
Dale, I can hear you, but so maybe again from their end.
all right. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So I was going through what our current interest rate percents are on the 2011, 12, and 13 bonds. Were you able to hear that?
Yes.
Okay. So we're at the point of where they say they're estimating when they did an analysis of our current open amounts to be refinanced, a savings of about $500,000 will be realized over the next 13 years, with a net interest cost average of 1.14% to be realized instead of the 2.5 to 3.75, the 2 to 3%, or the 3 to 4%. So a great savings in interest will be realized with years 1 through 11 garnering about $40,000 a year in savings, and a little less in the final 2 years. So in order to complete this process, we would like to bring forward a refunding bond resolution to the board to be voted on at the next meeting on August 8th. Annual debt borrowing, that's funded.
Okay. I think she's finished. No, that's okay, but I think you're finished, which is,
Okay.
I think I think we got to the end of that piece. So I'm assuming everybody's okay with saving some money by with essentially refinancing a bond in
Yes.
basic English. Okay.
Aye.
Thank you very much. We'll set that up for next week. Next.
Thank you, Treasurer
Village
Brennan.
Manager.
Next, we have Corporation Counsel talking about two local laws, Local Law 12 of 2021, which pertains to mobile payment for metered parking, and Local Law 8 of 2021, which pertains to administrative adjustments to zoning code.
Thank you. I'd like to just flip to do local law 8 first, and I believe that the planning board chair, Seth Roy, if he has not already joined, will be joining Mo.
He's not here.
Is there any way that we can switch computers, maybe? No?
I don't want to touch anything.
Okay.
And Craig left, right?
The local law 8 we've discussed previously, that is with regard to the administrative adjustments, allowing the building inspector to grant certain adjustments for fairly small deviations from what we know as the bulk requirements under the village's zoning code. The planning board had a discussion of this at its last meeting, and there were some questions raised about the ability of neighbors to be made aware of the request for an administrative adjustment. As a result of those conversations, the proposed local law has been slightly revised to provide for a notification provision whereby when there is an application received, the building department would send out what is now going to be called a notice of intent to seek administrative adjustment. It would be sent to the abutting owners only, and the abutting owner that is directly impacted by the administrative adjustment. So if someone's deck is going to be on the right side of their property line, the only person who's going to be notified is the neighbor on the right side. And the mailing would be done by the building department because, again, we're talking with very few folks to be notified. But this is done because the local law does provide for an ability to appeal a determination by the building inspector. And as we have with other sections in the zoning code, the person who can appeal is not only the person applying, but individuals who are aggrieved or adversely affected by the decision. And that would be a next door neighbor. In the case of a planning board or zoning board application, let's talk specifically zoning board, if someone is making an application for an area variance, there is already a notice requirement. This local law essentially puts in a modified notice requirement for the administrative adjustment so that the affected neighbor, affected abutter if you want to call it, is notified of this. And that abutter would have 10 days from the mailing of the notice to advise the building inspector of any issues with regard to the application. And Land Use Council will be preparing the recommendation letter for the board, but I did just want to make the board aware of this revision to include this notification provision.
Stuart, would you like me to bring Mr. Roy in?
Yes, because I believe the mayor had asked if Mr. Roy would participate.
Mr. Roy, you are here.
Mute. Hi.
Hello there.
Folks, the planning board chair is here. Seth, thanks for joining us. And if there are any questions with regard to the proposal, we're happy to answer.
Hi, Seth. Thank you for being here. I appreciate the work that you do as chair. I actually, how long have you been the chair for the committee? Is he frozen?
He is for us.
Pretty much,
He is on the large screen.
Is Craig still here?
Mr. Roy, I'm sorry, we are having difficulty hearing you.
Maddie, you're frozen again. Now you're not frozen.
Craig isn't the phone. I asked him to come back, but
I've been the chair since just the start of this year, so brand new.
Okay, great, thank you. So so it's also an opportunity for us to see you and meet you, especially via Zoom. I hope we're not disturbing you tonight, so thank you for making the time. I actually asked that you attend because the note that we received was that the planning board had asked for this. So what brought this to your attention? Were there complaints? Is this an efficiency issue for you? What is it that brought this to the forefront from the committee's point of view?
We had a discussion of the local law at the end of our most recent meeting, and the main track of the conversation we had dealt with just kind of the appeals process and how affected neighbors would be able to appeal a decision. A lot of obviously what we see in our meetings is when any proposal, and we're planning and not zoning, but we spend a lot of time speaking with neighbors affected both for and against proposals. In this particular instance, we noticed that the law had an appeals process that anybody could appeal any neighbor could appeal the decision after 30 days of it being granted, of this 10% or less variance being granted. But there was no way that anybody would know. So we were concerned, and it came up, one of the planning board members who's a former zoning board member actually noted this during a conversation. So, your neighbor builds their deck or their extension and it's close and somebody goes out with the tape measure, and, says this is closer than it's allowed, and I didn't know that I had an opportunity to appeal. So that's where we kind of suggested having some sort of a notice when this is done to give folks an opportunity to speak to it.
Okay, and so you've had a number of complaints about people not realizing that, and that's where it came from? Or you just said, hey, how does somebody appeal when they don't know it even happened?
It was an internal conversation. This was not based on community feedback. This was based on conversations that we had amongst the board.
Got it. Okay, so that actually, for me, makes a difference. So I appreciate that. And you're in favor of it, is I would assume, and you only think it should be done with the neighbor that's directly affected. If it's on the right side of the house, it's that neighbor. If it doesn't matter what the guy across the street thinks, right?
Exactly. Yeah. No, I think this makes sense and it solves a potential problem.
And you think this helps in streamlining the process, or does it burden the process?
No, I think this law definitely helps streamline the process. So on the basis of giving the buildings department the ability to look at these 10% less variances, I think that this should help both just in terms of the process from the buildings end and from the zoning board's end. But it'll also certainly help for folks doing typically smaller projects, or that would be bogged down or sometimes maybe prevented from moving forward because of the expense and the hassle of dealing with the variance process. So I think that it can be a net positive for sure.
Great. Anybody have any, I mean, that I was also, I'm happy to see you because I don't really get to talk to all the chairs about some of the things that they request. And it's easier for me to speak to the chairs than it is to the staff members who represent the committee. So I appreciate the time. Does anybody else have any questions?
I do. And thank you for being here. I know it's kind of late for us. We're almost done. But actually, I have a question to Stuart, for Stuart, and maybe Bob can help me on this one. So I understand the process. I was the one who suggested to bring this into effect a couple years back. My recollection was to streamline the process. I a little bit disagree with the notification to the neighbors. It doesn't matter if it's my next door neighbor. That was the intent. That was not the intent of when I brought this over to in front of the board 2 years ago. So, but let me ask you this question, Stuart, because you said in the zoning board, and Bob, you were there. So, can a neighbor dispute the decision of the board after the zoning board granted the variance?
They can go to court.
But that's on Article 78.
Correct.
Correct. Now, how many of those have we seen? I think so, yeah.
Say zero by that response.
Oh, we didn't hear you.
Sorry, so
Froze.
we froze, I guess. We froze and I couldn't hear.
I can think of one or two.
Okay.
Was that a commercial or residential?
Multifamily.
Okay. So this is not the intent for a multifamily, correct? This was more drafted to a residential. So I'm gonna paraphrase this, but maybe one, maybe, if anything. So to me, allowing the notification is not streamlining the process. So I'm in favor of the law. I'm not too thrilled. I understand the notification and it has 10 days of this, but if the decision was made by the zoning board or by the planning board or architecture review board, I haven't seen, when an applicant goes and then the board opens for public hearing, that gives the neighbors the opportunity to express either the favoritism on the particular project or the frustration about a project. And I think they're frozen again, so I'm just talking.
So if they're still moving for her, whatever
Can
we.
they hear
Whatever
us,
we
though?
did this week needs to be reevaluated, because last week everything worked. I suspect that if it's working on hers, and she's sort of the host, that they can actually hear us.
Have a problem last
And now-
week too.
Yeah, and now they're out.
And we
Oh, I
did-
wasn't here last
yeah,
week,
we did
excuse
have-
me.
Yeah.
We did have this problem.
So you have a week,
They just need to swap these, but
This-
I don't want to do it without Craig doing it, because there's
Okay.
We'll make it worse.
all right, so, well, there's no change in the routers. Who are you talking to, him?
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
You defeat the purpose. You already got your zoning variance.
Yeah.
The idea was so people didn't have to go back.
Correct.
Now you're just into the process with mailing
Yeah.
the letter.
And we're talking about a 10%. We're not talking about, we're talking about
Lose internet
inches, so
completely?
I don't know.
Was there, you think they're gonna notice 10%?
Just that computer.
See how it's spinning on there? That's the computer.
That's the computer that's
But
running.
you have access, they can see you?
No. Well, so I'm participating in the Zoom right now. It's me, Seth, and Stuart.
You can talk to that?
And attendees. You guys
You-
are not in it anymore. You guys are kicked off.
Got it, because of that.
But you can
Gotcha.
still, you can still talk to them.
What about if you flip that, can you flip that and focus on us? Can we finish the meeting?
Jesse? Yeah. Could you be helpful with
Yeah, we're back.
Yeah,
We were thrown out. You guys were still on with Maddi, but we were thrown off. So I'm going to take that as a subtle hint from someone above that says we've sort of hit the time limit. All right, so while we were off,
Internet went out.
yeah.
There we go again.
Good Lord.
Point
Look.
that he was making.
So, Stuart, thanks, Omar. So I don't think the additional here notice it was going to help the streamline of the process. I don't see that. Could you explain? Probably explain to me in a different way, maybe that I'm not seeing this, please.
There is a provision in the code, in the proposed local law, which is consistent with what we have in other sections for land use boards, that individuals who are aggrieved or adversely affected by the decision can appeal the decision. In this case, they would appeal it to the Zoning Board of Appeals. The point that was raised by Planning Board member Nina Aaron, who was also on the ZBA, was that how would you be able to appeal if you don't know that an application has in fact been filed? And to alleviate that concern, there was a provision that was added in which would provide essentially a notice, but only to a select number of individuals, in most cases probably no more than one or two, who would be notified and would have the opportunity, if they wanted to raise an objection or at least make a comment. And the comment, it's not that it be a public hearing. There's no provision here for a public hearing, but they could let the building inspector know, what if there is an issue. Doesn't mean that the building inspector, it just means the building inspector is made aware of it and could consider that, in making his or her determination. The mailing would go from the building department. It would go out probably when the application comes in. It would be a simple form saying, this has come in, just to let you know, and that's all it is. It does not slow up the clock otherwise. All the other time periods that are in here remain the same.
Stuart, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, so when you say their opportunity to appeal the decision, that's the decision of the variance or whatever is given by the zoning board at the time the application is heard at the zoning board.
No, it's the decision by the building inspector to grant an administrative adjustment.
There's provisions other places throughout land use for that?
Yes, well, there are other provisions that the person aggrieved, or the person who is the person aggrieved, or the person adversely affected. We do have that language in other parts of our land use code, correct?
So we're just tweaking this to line up with what we already have.
Right, and what we're doing is the notice is not the standard 300 feet. It's just essentially the abutter, and it's the abutter who is only the abutter who is directly affected by this.
Okay, thank you. It's not.
Sure.
Say pick your battles.
All right. So with that, thanks, Stuart. So it seems like it's only me because the problem, or not the problem, but the challenge for me is if it's a deck, sure, you get the deck, the building inspector makes his comments, he knows that it's less than 10%, he can submit or he can release or give the permit to the homeowner within 2 weeks, more or less. He will have to wait the 10 days before he even releases that. So that gives him, a leeway of maybe a month now. So I know that's a lot better than going in front of the zoning board, which it will take you 2 months to get there. So I guess that is the streamlining. You save yourself a month.
You save you also save a lot of the other fees that might be associated with all of this. Because the way it is now is the building inspector would be making that determination within 30 days of the completed application, or unless the building inspector decides that the application should go to the full ZBA anyway. That the building inspector could grant it sooner than 30 days, sure. They could get a comment in and just think there's nothing to the comment and just still grant the permit right away. So it could be granted someone gets you the thing 10 days out, then on day 11, the building inspector theoretically could grant the permit if they thought it was fine.
Thanks, Stuart. The majority rules.
Stuart still has to stay
Yeah.
on.
Yes,
so
yes,
What's
yes.
the next item?
Now we're on to 12.
Next item is local law 12, folks, and that is, as you know, we've recently signed an agreement with regard to the mobile payment system. This would revise section 250-33.1 of the code, which deals with metered parking, to allow for either the mobile payment system or multi-space parking machines, and to accept those as means of paying for parking spaces. So that's to basically allow for it, because currently the code does not allow for it.
Any comments on it? We've discussed this before.
No,
I think
I'm
this is
good.
just the process.
Yep.
Okay?
Thank you,
next.
Stuart.
Thanks, Stuart. Next.
Okay, we'll call that for a public hearing.
Thank you.
And then last that we have on here is the cabaret license for La Isla del Tesoro. I think the chief, I don't know if the chief is on or not, but the reason I wanted to have this discussion with you folks is, if you recall, the last time this restaurant applied, it was denied by the board. I think there was some issues vis-a-vis the OPD. This time, both the building department and the OPD gave them a clean bill of health. So it's coming back before you for a new cabaret license. And we would have to tweak some of the times, because they are going to 3 a.m. and we don't have any cabaret license that goes that late. They also are starting at 11. We don't have any that starts that early. But I did just want to bring this to everyone's attention. And as I said, there was a denial last time. So because of that, I thought it would be appropriate to bring it before the board to see if there were any questions with regard to this particular application.
Well, I think Bob wants to say something.
Yeah, just on a cabaret license, they're annual, correct?
Yes.
All right, now, can we set parameters on that, or it could be revoked at any time?
If there are violations, permits are they're essentially a license, so they can be revoked if there's an issue with this place.
Right. The reason I ask that is because there was a reason why we denied it the last time, so I
Do you remember
I don't
the reason,
remember.
Stuart?
I know it was with regard, I think what happened last time, Mayor, was that the board actually granted it, and then I think that the chief had an objection, and then when he appeared before the board actually passed a subsequent resolution reversing the earlier grant. So I believe it was OPD related. This time I can tell you that it was sent to the OPD for their input, and Lieutenant Damiano indicated that there were no intervening complaints. So he signed off on it.
To be fair, yeah, that's also likely because there were few activities in 2020 that didn't have a lot of opportunities. So I'm glad they had a clean bill of health, but like my colleague, Trustee Fritchie, I have one eye open to see what's happening this year. So if we have any reports that things are going in the wrong direction, then we reserve the right to pull the license.
Understood.
And just to piggyback on the whole thing is because, this particular business, no matter what kind of name they change, has always been an issue for us for several years now. So I'll be just curious to see what OPD had change of heart, I guess, in a way, or because sometimes they do have conversations with the owners, and things have changed. So I'll be curious to ask Kevin, I guess, or Lieutenant
But he's
Damiano.
not-
Unfortunately, he's not in
He's
here. Yeah.
usually here. Why is he not
I,
here?
No, because it may be because he was on the queue to come into the meeting, but he may not have been called to join this call.
Is this the chief? That's
Yeah.
talking about? Yeah, he's en route here right
Oh, that's who you're talking about?
Oh, he's coming here.
This is on Main Street, right?
Okay. Oh, okay. I thought you meant Craig. That's why I
Maybe
couldn't figure
changed
out.
ownership, didn't
All
it?
right.
So he's en route here? Is this the last one? Yes. So,
Yes, it is, Mayor.
okay, so we'll wait for him. Why is he coming? He could have called.
Because he may not have heard that part of the meeting and just saw that basically the internet died. That's fine.
What are we recording? Are we recording the camera?
Everything right now.
Okay, those 4 cameras though, but those 4 cameras usually move. They haven't moved.
We're recording.
They're recording? Hi.
You're off hold, Stuart.
All right,
Thank you.
Stuart, the chief arrived here. So, thank you for coming, chief. We would have done it by cell phone, but we couldn't catch you in time. Stuart's on a cell phone with a mic set up here, and it's being recorded over there, just not on Zoom.
Okay.
So we are discussing the cabaret license.
Chief, this is for La Isla del Tesoro.
Yep.
Yes.
I know that last year there was an objection, so that's why it was denied. And I know that we did get the report from Lieutenant Damiano of no current reports, but, Trustee Lopez pointed out that, for a good portion of last year, a lot of these places were closed. I didn't know if there were any further objections from your end with regard to this location.
Yeah, I don't know. I ran a blotter report, and there was something like 72 blotters associated with 185 Main Street over the past 12 months. I'm not sure what reports he said there didn't exist. Made an arrest there last week for a fight. Probably 5 to 10 calls in the last 6 months of disorder, noise, drunken people, same stuff that we've always had. General sentiment from people who live on Main Street is that they don't like live music, they don't like the bars. Nothing productive comes from them. It's a headache for the police department. It's not helpful.
So that will be a
There'll
no
be a
to
no
this.
from, well,
Usually I don't give a recommendation.
He
I tell
doesn't
you
give-
what our
No, I know,
experience has
I
been,
know.
and the board makes those
so
decisions.
why did Damiano write that it was okay from the police
We
department?
don't write that it's okay. We simply return reports. If he said there's no reports, I'd have to check on why it said
Okay,
that.
that'll be helpful, because this is what happened last year. That's why also Trustee Fritchie brought it up too, with a little, I think, surprise that it was getting a thumbs up because we are familiar with the scenario. So, based on what the chief is saying, I'm not in favor of this. What are the, and I would have to, I haven't heard from Dana or Manny, but.
I'm not in favor of this at all.
Neither am I.
Anybody?
No.
Okay, so everybody is not in favor? Did I read that? I'm sorry, I should be near the mic. No, I know, but still, I need confirmation. I'm getting that. All right, well, thank you for that. So I don't know what the ramifications are for this particular item, but Stuart, you will let them know that that was a no from the board?
Yes, I will. He'll be notified by the clerk's office.
Okay, and, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Stuart.
All righty.
Okay.
So just if you could check, Chief White, because if you had not shown up, that would have been a different ending to that story. We would have had to come back again next week and do what we did. So if you could just check, that would be helpful.
Sure.
Because just change the entire vote. All righty.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
Luckily, we don't, luckily, we're not a 100-mile wide village.
Thank you. Good night. So once we're ready, we have executive session?
I think that's it, yes?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, is Stuart still on?
I am. Is that going through Zoom or how are we doing that?
We're gonna have to, well, what Maddie can do is she can call you and Linda, and we can have you
That
both.
has- I'm sorry, hold on.
Yeah, we can.
Or we'll just do it,
We'll
we'll
just
do it.
keep you on this line.
Okay, we'll do.
Okay,
There's a different Zoom number. We just have to make a motion. There's a different Zoom
Yeah,
number
but it
for,
won't work. It won't matter. We can't use it. It doesn't matter what the Zoom
I so
number
move on that motion.
okay.
Second.
Okay, so I think we are voting yes on concluding this meeting. I'm sure there's a better way to say it, but I'm focused on how we're going to have our executive session. So this concludes our meeting tonight. It is 10:27. Thank you all who were able to see it. Most of this was recorded on Zoom, and some of it will continue on YouTube that you could watch it and join us for next week for a legislative session. Thank you all. We're done.